Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1361 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news out of many different regions. We've seen Venezuela is panicking today as airstrikes appear to be imminent. We've also seen that Russia's been slammed by large Ukrainian drone attacks on their refineries yet again tonight. And also, Iran has issued emergency alerts to citizens to prepare for war imminently, as it looks like we're about to go back to war with Iran yet again. And it's good to see you all once more.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, and we're going to be speaking of wars and upcoming wars over the course of today's news, as we do have a large amount of developments that have surfaced from practically every single corner of the globe, and it is once again giving us a significant idea that war is on the horizon in the very near future within the Eastern Caribbean, and not only that, there has been a significant amount of developments in the war in Ukraine. We've been able to hear over the course of the day that the Russian Federation has suffered another significant blow by the Ukrainian armed forces overnight, as Ukrainian drones and missiles were able to land on their targets deep within the Russian Federation in Samara, Ryazan, Volgograd, and Rostov-on-Don, causing significant amounts of damage throughout the country, and of course damaging a large amount of critical industries that are vital to the city's economies within these smaller areas. We have also seen that satellite footage has emerged from Novorossiysk confirming that the entire oil loading dock has been completely destroyed and is now going to be inoperable, most likely for months. While at the same time, we are also hearing that the Islamic Republic of Iran has now put out a Amber Alert, is the best way to explain it, to the Iranian public, telling them that war is most likely going to be inevitable by the time around December of this year, as they are expecting to be in another war with the State of Israel and the United States of America. In the meantime, the Islamic Republic of Iran has also officially announced that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps did seize the Marshall Island flag tanker tanker Talara and stated that they conducted the operation due to the vessel violating Iranian laws, or generally Iranian customs, although the vessel was transiting in international waters, clearly making this an effective blockade at this moment. Meanwhile, the United States of America is poised to strike the Republic of Venezuela just about any minute now. We are waiting at this moment to see when the strikes will be conducted, but they have a high chance of happening over the course of this weekend or over the course of next weekend, or at least generally within the next 2 weeks. No joke intended. The Republic of Venezuela is absolutely in panic mode at the moment, as even Venezuelan resistance leaders are now making televised or radio announcements into the Republic of Venezuela, telling the Venezuelan armed forces to lay down their arms when the U.S. forces arrive and to simply allow for the Maduro regime to fade away into non-existence. At the same time, a large energy grid attack happened within the area of Puerto La Cruz, within the eastern area of the coastline of Venezuela, suggesting some form of sabotage or some form of Venezuelan government meddling to make it seem as though the United States of America is conducting these attacks against Venezuela. In the meantime, aerial tankers have now started to arrive at Roosevelt Roads, while a U.S. Marine contingent within the Republic of Haiti apparently exchanged fire with some gangs within the area of Port-au-Prince earlier today, completely detached to the Venezuelan situation, but interesting nonetheless. Meanwhile, some representatives of the United States government, including some Congress members, have also made additional statements about the high likelihood of attacks against Venezuela happening here within the very near future. Outside of the Americas, we have also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China is now threatening to quite literally cut the head off of the Japanese Prime Minister after the Japanese Prime Minister stated that a possible invasion of Taiwan by the Communist Chinese would force the Japanese to intervene in support of the island of Taiwan and the collective defense of the Western alliance within this region. The Chinese, suffice it to say, are absolutely tweaking over this statement and have not ceased in their violent remarks towards the state of Japan and their government over the past several days, with the statements now increasing in their violence, such as the one seen today. Meanwhile, Ukrainian armed forces were able to hold the lines and engage the Russian Federation's armed forces in major battles at Kupyansk and Pokrovsk, stopping most, if not all, Russian Federation advances over the course of the day. We have also seen what we are believing at this moment to be a Russian response to the Novorossiysk attack, as 3 Khinzal hypersonic missiles were fired into the state of Ukraine overnight, which we believe is supposed to be a significant show of force, and unfortunately for the Russians, 2 out of the 3 Khinzals were shot down by Patriot air defense batteries, meaning that their response to the Novorossiysk attack was largely moot, as only 1 missile made it through. But of course, we will be covering all of the major news that we have over the course of the day, and all of the other smaller stories that we also have throughout the course of the night. I cannot...
Also, real quick, I do want to say this, by the way, because we're watching the Venezuela situation really closely, because right now I'm trying to monitor as many different sources as I can, because tonight appears to be a very interesting night of panic on the Venezuelan back channels. It looks like most Venezuelan sources believe that attacks may start tonight, which was my general prediction yesterday. Maybe it might start tonight, possibly, but nonetheless, if it happens or doesn't happen tonight, it looks like the Venezuelans are indeed panicking severely. I'm literally scrolling through hundreds of messages from different Venezuelan channels, and they are in panic mode all the way through. So not really sure where this is going to go. We have seen some movements today militarily from the United States, which indicates something's coming. And also we've heard from the opposition leader, they say the hour is imminent of an attack. So we're not really sure where this is going, but we're watching it really closely. I just wanted to say that, by the way, because I see a lot of people talking about that, and we are watching these back channels to see what they're saying.
And of course, we are on high alert at this moment here in Enforcer HQ, waiting to see when the strikes happen. As soon as they start to happen, we will go live with live up-to-date coverage of any news and developments that we are able to get out of the Republic of Venezuela once those strikes are conducted. But it is time for us, folks, to start moving on into the major news that we have over the course of the entire day. So strap yourselves in, get some popcorn, because once again, today was another wild day like many others that we've seen over the course of this year. So moving us directly on into our largest news of the day, we have been able to confirm that the armed forces of Ukraine have conducted another major and significant attack against the Russian Federation and its major cities within the southwestern part of the Russian Federation. Federation. A large amount of drones were detected by Russian air defenses, and from what we understand, the larger number of them were actually being directed all the way from the Ryazan Oblast and all the way down towards the area of Stavropol, with a small number of them making it all the way to Volgograd and also Samara. We were able to confirm attacks and epicenters of attacks within all directions of the drone attacks that we can see on this map represented here so far. Moving us into the confirmed drone attacks, we'll be starting with Rostov-on-Don, where we were able to see what appeared to have been dozens of luminous objects over the sky. That's what we call air defense fire in the normal world, and those are tracers that are going up into the sky from Russian light machine guns to attempt to shoot down the incoming drones over the city. They were generally unsuccessful. Moving on from that clip in Rostov-on-Don, we then were able to confirm over at Volgograd things did not go too well over the course of the night, as Volgograd did take several significant hits, including several hits once again on the Lukoil refinery and the southern end of the city of Volgograd. You can actually see the Lukoil refinery right here. This is the Lukoil Volgograd refinery complex, which is one of the newest and somewhat larger refineries within the Russian Federation. This refinery became operational in late 2022. In the midst of the ongoing war in Ukraine, and ever since then we have seen that the Volgograd refinery has ended up being the victim of multiple Ukrainian strikes and has probably been out of action longer than it's ever been operational, at least in its current service life. Once again, last night was no exception. Multiple Ukrainian attacks were reported throughout the city, and it does appear that some of them happened directly over the area of the refinery. But here's our first clip confirming an explosion within Volgograd. Oh, do you hear that? Oh!
Oh, wow.
That was kind of close.
Oh, there's some screaming there at the end, too. Did you hear that? Sound like someone maybe broke an ankle or something like that. I guess they were trying to take cover.
Let's take a little listen to that one again. Huh, man, someone, yeah, man, like that just cut out. Honestly, man, I don't know what was happening to them. I think they might have just been shocked by the size of the explosion of the drone outside, but still confirming that Volgograd was clearly under attack, both by the massive fireball outside the window and also the guy back further on in the apartment yelling, "Yeah, but!" then getting cut off in the clip. Our additional clip also showed us further hits that were happening inside of Volgograd, including this one right here. We can see that due to electronic warfare activity, some Ukrainian drones did veer off of their course and ended up slamming either into parks, like we just saw a second ago in the first clip, or into apartment buildings around the greater area of Volgograd.
Wow, they're getting very excited about this.
Also, looking off into the distance here, kind of towards the refinery, we can also see this citizen looking straight at it, waiting for a fire. But it does appear that a decent amount of electronic warfare activities by the Russians did veer some of the drones off course, which ended up hitting some apartment buildings. Still, we were able to see this additional clip as well, showing this cute little cat that was looking out towards the refinery, watch the refinery getting hit in real time. So let's take a look at that.
Musia.
The cat sees the drone and the explosion. Well, Kitty got to have a great day, and from what we understand, that's the refinery right there getting hit again. From what we are able to tell, at least from the clips so far, it appears that this film was actually taken within one of the Khrushchevskayas or Brezhnevkas north of the refinery, and they were looking south into the area of the refinery, which is where the explosion occurred. It generally seems that this explosion happened within the northwestern quadrant of the oil refinery, once again showing us that some sort of critical infrastructure or plumbing of the plant was hit and most likely knocked out of action due to this strike. Volgograd was hit quite heavily, not only at the refinery, but throughout the entirety of the city at large, once again showing us that significant Ukrainian drone attacks are continuing to pummel Russian Federation cities into practical oblivion, especially economically and strategically. Moving further on up the Volga River and on up to Samara, we also were able to confirm that Ukrainian drones attacked the refineries south of Samara once more. There are actually two refineries south of the city of Samara. There's the Novorossiysk refinery within the city of Novorossiysk, and then there's the Samara refinery, which is only a few miles off to the east and is in one of the very southerly areas of the city of Samara. basically pretty much outside of Samara. It's halfway in between Samara and Novorossiysk, but technically it's still the Samara refinery. This refinery was the one that was attacked, not the Novorossiysk refinery. The Novorossiysk refinery was already attacked about a week and a half ago, and we do understand that it seems to be largely inoperable or operating at a reduced capacity, so the Ukrainians have skipped over this refinery, at least for today, and went for the Samara refinery here to the south of the city. So here's the clip of the proof of the explosions on this refinery. Sounds like it's raining out there. But
is that actual rain, or is that shrapnel or something?
Is that rain, or is that acid rain? Because the Russians have no environmental laws. It's like, man, watch out, this stuff could melt through your roof probably. But you know, Matthew, the Ukrainians actually have a rip-off motto that they use for their drone corps. Have you ever heard of it?
What is it?
They said, rain, snow, sleet, or shine, the bombs will always deliver on time. And we can see in this clip right here, they do.
Пропал.
Пропал, she says. And any second, oh, there we go.
Ага. Но не видно было где.
And that was the confirmation of the hit. That loud boom in the distance was a Ukrainian drone landing smack dab in the midst of the Samara refinery and knocking it out from what we assume. So we'll have to wait for additional information to see how heavily this plant was knocked out, as some of them do get knocked out, but they're still able to operate at a minimal capacity or a reduced capacity in terms of their refining output. But we'll have to wait and see for a damage assessment tomorrow to understand exactly how extensive the damage was at the Samara refinery. Also, moving on out of Samara, we were able to see that Ukraine's favorite city to attack was attacked again, the city of Ryazan. The city of Ryazan is south of Moscow on the E30 and has been hit more times than we can count here on the channel. It's basically every single week that the town of Ryazan gets hit, and it is a very easy city to target and hit for one particular reason. The power plant for the whole city, which is the Ryazansk TETS thermal power plant, is literally in the same area as the oil refinery that is run by RNPK, or generally the Ryazan Oil Refinery Company. So it is incredibly easy to cause significant damage to the city of Ryazan by conducting attacks, as the drones are all coordinated to hit this one singular area, and they can knock out both the power plant and the refinery simultaneously if the drones are not interfered with by electronic warfare. This town was hit again, and that's really no surprise, but here's one of the clips that we were able to see showing us that attack and the damage that was caused. I worked in the neighboring house, this person says. Just now, I ran home. It's just raining, and it's hard to see. Here I increased it as much as I could. And most importantly, I run home one more time. Huyak, she says. Well, here we go again. They're bombing us. Passion. And that right
I gotta have that passion with it, honestly. You know, after seeing like, I think it was like a total of like 2 or 3 different refineries hit just today alone, it makes you wonder how they keep finding parts to keep repairing these places, because they are repairing them slowly over the course of months. They're getting them back into action, but where are they getting the parts to actually repair the thing from?
That's a good question. We actually do not know. But one thing we are starting to see, however, is that it is taking them longer each time to bring the refineries back up to operational capacity. That is suggesting that there is some sort of existent supply somewhere in Russia of spare parts that is starting to run out, or it's starting to decrease greatly in number, or they have run out of spare parts and they're having to somehow try and get them into Russia through third-party shell companies or some sort of assembler program to be able to even try and repair the refineries. This one is cooking again, and I've got to be honest with y'all, I don't even know how many times this refinery has been hit anymore. It's well over 20 times that this refinery has been hit and repaired back up to some operational capacity and then destroyed again. So at the moment, I can't actually tell y'all how many times this refinery has been hit and repaired. It's been an incredibly large number, however. That's one thing that I can say. And it seems that the Russians will most likely be having to spend an even longer amount of time trying to repair this refinery to get it back up to an operational level. I'd also like to point out to y'all something else that's a little bit interesting. Here to the west of the refinery are the cemeteries of the city of Ryazan. And this is something that I want to point out particularly because I just found this quite interesting. Many of y'all have been watching this channel for years, literal years, and I remember the first times that we were covering attacks on Ryazan, this cemetery was generally the only one that was in the city, along with this one over here, which was the new cemetery that was created a couple of decades ago, but this cemetery down here was brand spanking new, and had been made for all of the losses of the citizens from Ryazan that had been seen in the war in Ukraine. I remember when they were still excavating these with excavators to start burying people in them. And now we can see that this entire cemetery has been filled, and not only that has been filled so long ago, most of it is pretty much overgrown with grass, save for several plots here that appear to have been freshly buried. So many people are dying from the war in Ukraine and Russia because of their service in the Russian armed forces and aka the meat grinder, that they're having to even extend the brand new cemetery an additional sector to be able to keep up with the amount of deaths that are happening because of the war in Ukraine. Just to give you all a little bit of a glimpse as to how bad the casualties really are for the Russian army, they are building brand new cemeteries that are rivaling the size of the normal cemeteries in the city just to bury the dead from the war in Ukraine. That is an unbelievably large number of deaths just for a singular city, and this is reflected across practically the entirety of the Russian Federation, except for St. Petersburg and Moscow. So a little bit of an interesting note to add in right there about how many deaths are happening in the Russian army because of the war. And none of these guys are walking wounded, they're in boxes. So generally giving us an idea the fatalities in the war are excruciatingly high for the Russians at this point. Moving on, though, from Ryazan, it does seem that the Russian Federation just cannot hold on with these sorts of attacks continuing, and even still, we have been able to get further updates out of Novorossiysk to give us a clearest picture that we could possibly ever get about how bad the damage really was from the Ukrainian attacks from last night. And we were able to see the satellite photography here coming out of Novorossiysk confirming to us that the oil loading platforms are quite literally gone. This is what they looked like before, or actually I can show you all that here on Google Maps because it hasn't updated here yet. This is what this area looked like before, and this is all of the pipework and pumps and the plumbing needed to be able to take the oil from its storage tanks here on land and then pump them onto the ships out here at the oil loading dock. This entire area of plumbing has been reduced to cinder. This is what it currently looks like right now on satellite, and there is literally no observable pipework or pump works that exist within that area. The entire thing burned to the ground from the Ukrainian drone attack. This dock is completely inoperable, and we also were able to get additional confirmation of that because the oil terminals, as of today, when the satellite footage was published, are completely empty. The Vostochny Rayon... Go ahead.
That's wild right there. I've never really seen that port completely emptied out like that. That's very, very, very unusual right there. So yeah, that indicates that thing it must be totally out of action because I don't think there's any time during the war I've seen it like this.
It has never looked like this, as a matter of fact. Throughout the entire war, there has always been at least one ship at Tuapse, Novorossiysk, Primorsk, and Ust-Luga that was loading up crude oil at any given period of time. The fact that there is not a single ship at the dock at Novorossiysk is confirming to us that the oil loading platforms are completely out of operation, to the point that a ship won't even moor at them to see if an attempt could be made to load oil on. The Vostochny Rayon is still full. We can actually see a decent amount of combat vessels, including a Kilo-class submarine, visible here on the satellite photography, but still, that's not really the point. They'll get hit here in the future. And honestly, they're not even that important of a strategic target any longer. The Black Sea Fleet has been reduced in force by half over the course of the war. But the oil loading platform in Novorossiysk being completely cleared out is a telltale sign that Novorossiysk truly has been destroyed as an operational port. That's not even an exaggeration to try and make it seem more interesting for a YouTube video. Novorossiysk port is literally gone and is no longer an operational port. So Novorossiysk is now a coastal town, not a port. At least until they eventually get that back online, which may take an incredibly long period of time due to the extent and extremity of the damage that was seen within the area. Still, a lot of people have been talking about the Ukrainian attack that's been conducted on the Russian Federation and its refineries today. And also another crazy statement that we have to tell y'all is that the Ukrainians have stated today that they are going to conduct these attacks daily from this day forward. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts as to whether or not the Ukrainians can actually keep that up or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So we do see that today Zelensky did vow to attack Russia daily in these massive drone attacks. So somehow Ukraine is going to somehow maintain this pace, at least according to what they're saying, attacking multiple different refineries each day. So that's a lofty goal. I'll even say that myself. Ukraine definitely has a large drone base, but that's a lofty goal. So what are your thoughts about that? And it looks like 72% said Ukraine can and will maintain that pace, while 15% said Ukraine cannot maintain that pace, and 6% said Ukraine should probably conserve their drones and not do it every single day and probably save up for a larger attack. So here's what we know. Russia has a very, very large drone manufacturing base, and they slightly outpace Ukraine when it comes to drone manufacturing. But at the same time, though, Ukraine also has a very robust drone manufacturing base as well. Slightly less capacity than what Russia has, but it's still pretty much on par with it. So I believe Ukraine can maintain this level of drone attacks. One thing Ukraine can't do, though, they can't fire cruise missiles every single day at Russia. That would simply not be feasible. They don't have the manufacturing capability yet to pull that off, but they can manufacture drones in large enough numbers to do that. So I'm with the 72%. Ukraine can and they will maintain the pace. And generally, we've seen they've attacked every other day in the past, and now they're going to attack daily, according to what they're saying. But Enforcer, what say you?
They don't have enough cruise missiles to conduct daily attacks yet, but they probably will get to the point in the future where they will be able to produce enough cruise missiles to possibly conduct attacks every other day or every day with cruise missiles, although that might be a really tall order considering that the Russian Federation, even with the large stockpile of missiles that they had starting the war, are hardly able to conduct cruise missile attacks in large volume every single day, even at this point in the war, with most of their efforts being diverted towards the war effort. But I will say that as far as Ukrainian drone attacks are concerned, the Ukrainians can keep up a pace of daily attacks against the Russian Federation because for months now, they have already been doing that nearly. It's only one day out of the month or a couple of days out of the month that a Ukrainian attack is not happening inside of Russia because of the drones. So I would say that it's not a stretch at all to completely remove those few spare days where they're not conducting attacks and conduct endless round-the-clock attacks against the Russian Federation day in and day out, especially once they start to add the Flamingo cruise missiles to their arsenal and start to use those in larger numbers. We could see that a Flamingo does the work of about 20 Liudi drones in a single hit whenever it successfully hits a target. And that also means that greatly increases the amount of targets that Ukraine can attack because the damage value of the explosive mass in a single Flamingo is able to divert 20 Liudi drones to 20 other targets possibly throughout the Russian Federation each time a Flamingo is used in any given attack. So generally I would say this sort of a pace can be kept up throughout the duration of the war, and not only that, Ukraine is going to divert a lot of resources and effort towards this action because this is, without a doubt, the most successful thing that has come out of the war. No battle in Ukraine has ever caused this much damage to the Russian military and the Russian Federation as the attacks that Ukraine is conducting on the Russian ports, on the Russian refineries, and on other critical Russian industry. When we look at it that way, why in the world would they ever try and slow down the attacks, and why wouldn't they increase the pace of the attacks? What kind of damage has been seen at this scale before in history in this modern day and age? Hardly any. The only time you would see damage like this would be on the Highway of Death in Iraq in the Gulf War of 1991. The Ukrainians are able to lay to waste everything of value in Russia with incredibly inexpensive drones, and they are able to bring an entire nation that was once considered by many to be a superpower to their knees. That is something that a lot of countries would never be able to even dream of doing. And yet Ukraine has shut down 3 out of 4 of Russia's west coast oil ports. They have destroyed the majority of the refineries within the Russian Federation. Most of them are currently offline right now. They have completely reduced the Russian Federation's major economic machines of industry, like their oil companies, to shadows of the former themselves. They have reduced the Russian tactics base by at least 40%. They have pushed the Russians into a corner where they might have to end up attacking NATO in an act of desperation to get diplomatic concessions because the war is going that poorly. And that's not because the Ukrainian army has defeated the Russian Federation on the battlefield. That's because Ukrainian drones have been defeating Russians on the home front for about 2 years at this point. And that in itself would lead us to believe that the Ukrainians, knowing how successful this tactic is, would only increase the prevalence of it and the dailiness of it, making it a daily event. So I would be well within the large percentage that would say the Ukraine certainly can keep this up, and they will because of the necessity of these actions. But moving on out of the Eastern European area, and generally the Russian Federation for now, we'll come back to it in a little bit. But we have to bring y'all to other major news from around the rest of the world. And there's rumors of war pretty much in every other area of the world. And when we say rumors, it's pretty much officiated rumors at this point in most areas. So strap in, everyone. Once again, tonight's another crazy night, and we've got to get y'all through each and every single bit of the craziness that has been going on over the day. So moving us on over into the Eastern Caribbean on the American hunt for Captain Crack Sparrow at his band of 40 thieves, just to make sure that we say that as correctly as we can, we have been able to hear that the United States of America is as close as they possibly can be at this point to conducting a full-scale attack against the Republic of Venezuela, and that's going to be happening about any day at this point. According to a statement from a U.S. Congress member, we were able to hear the following. From U.S. Congressman Carlos A. Jimenez, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. We are tracking reports that the Maduro narco regime may be preparing to sabotage key Venezuelan infrastructure, including major bridges, tunnels, and refineries, and later blame the United States or Democratic opposition. And that's not the Democrats as the political party, that's just democracy as a concept. While unverified, these claims match the desperate tactics of a collapsing dictatorship. The United States will continue to stand firmly with the Venezuelan people against tyranny, corruption, and any attempt by the regime to manufacture chaos or manipulate the truth for political survival. We then were able to hear additional information out of the area of Venezuela today that is giving a lot more credence that the U.S. strikes against Venezuela are going to be coming very soon. Inside of Venezuela, there is an existing and operational opposition to the Maduro regime, and many of y'all will know that the leader of that Venezuelan opposition was actually awarded the Nobel Peace Prize this year for her actions and supported the Venezuelan opposition against Nicolas Maduro. And that very same leader of the opposition made a announcement today speaking to the Venezuelan people and in a message to the Maduro regime loyalists stating, "Lower your weapons and don't you dare attack the people. What is going to happen is already happening. The decisive hour is imminent," largely insinuating the U.S. actions against the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan government at large is going to be happening incredibly soon. We would believe that this comes off of credible information that these statements are being made and broadcast into Venezuela from the Venezuelan opposition because the Venezuelan opposition works heavily with the United States government in attempting to undermine and put out the Maduro regime inside of Venezuela. This gives us a very strong indicator that apparently the opposition leader has been given information that a U.S. strike against the Maduro regime is imminent, and they're attempting to use the sway and ability of the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado here, to be able to try and encourage some people in Venezuela to either support the calls to overthrow the Maduro regime or to lay down their arms and offer as little resistance as possible to the upcoming U.S. actions within the area. Well, I'll give you all a little snippet of this clip. Of course, it's all in Spanish, and we do not have a translation here, unfortunately, but I'll let y'all hear a little bit of the audio clip just to confirm that the audio clip is authentic.
Queridos venezolanos, el rugido de esta tierra que exige libertad crece y resuena dentro y fuera del país. 30 millones nos rebelamos ante un régimen criminal que va de salida.
And so y'all can
Por
tell...
favor, Maduro, you go!
Man, you go! Man, like we're about to turn into the Chinese sheriff guard out here, man. We're about to go, you go! But moving out of that, another interesting action that was conducted today that seems to be very much in line with the Congress member's statements earlier on the day about the Venezuelans possibly sabotaging their own energy infrastructure within the city of Puerto La Cruz, which is within the eastern coastline of the nation of Venezuela. There was a very interesting occurrence with a power sabotage that happened just a few hours hours ago. According to information that we were able to get, 3 electricity transmission towers in Venezuela's Juan Antonio Sotelo municipality were attacked and toppled. The country's national energy corporation, Corpo Elic. What type of name is that? Corporate electricity? That's what that's supposed. Anyways, has described it as sabotage, leaving a significant part of the local population without power. The part that they forget to mention is that there are rolling blackouts in Venezuela every day, so this is more so of just a minor inconvenience to the population than stopping the lifeblood of the country like it is in America, considering that electricity is available every day 24/7 within the United States because our power grid actually works. Moving on.
And also, what's the logic? Like, I don't really understand the logic behind this. The U.S. is warning that Maduro will try to sabotage his own infrastructure in Venezuela to blame it on the United States or the opposition in Venezuela. For what reason exactly? Because the Venezuelan people that are willing to fight are already called up for duty. They're already on standby. So it's not like he needs something else to convince people. The people that are willing to fight are already there. So what's the real rationale behind it? Because I personally don't understand the logic.
I have no clue either, to be entirely honest with you. When that was being made as a statement, I was like, I wasn't going to bring it up, but how little sense does that actually make? If Venezuela sabotages their own stuff, that's like taking a pistol to your foot and blowing your toes off. It doesn't help out anyone. You're not really making yourself look like that much of a victim, and no one's going to come to help you out if you blow your toes off. So I don't really know why in the world that is the idea that we have at the moment, because it's not like if Venezuela blows up its own stuff, China's going to go, okay, we're stepping in. They don't even have the ability to step in. They're thousands of miles across on the other side of the world. They don't even have the ability to get over here, and the Russians have completely abandoned the Venezuelans at this point. So it's like, well, who are they doing that for? To prove anything to?
Yeah, whatever Russia's going to do to help Venezuela out has already been done, because we did see some aircraft that went into Venezuela in the weeks prior, allegedly maybe carrying Russian weapons or maybe even Russian mercenary forces of a sort. We're not really still clear on that. But Russia at this point has pretty much stopped any movement of aid to Venezuela, at least from what we can see. So Venezuela is pretty much on their own. Russia's not going to come in here and defend Venezuela on the ground. That's not happening. China's not going to do it either, from what we can see as well. So Venezuela's on their own. So if Maduro goes and sabotages his own electrical grid, which is stupid beyond belief, just to garner sympathy from nobody, that would be probably the dumbest, honestly, the most Maduro thing I've ever heard of, to be honest. That has no logic behind it.
Yeah, and also another thing, folks, I gotta say this, got this dead on the nail with the prediction side of things. The Russians and the Chinese are not helping Venezuela, not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. There's no way for any of them to make it here to Venezuela to help them out in any way. So they were entirely on their own from square one. And while the Russians did fly in some equipment in some IL-76 flights to Venezuela, they also stopped that once the Gerald R. Ford arrived, which made it incredibly clear that the U.S. is down for business, and we're going to be bombing them here quite soon. So once the Russians saw that the U.S. really meant business, and we were about to start bombing them, they got the hell out of Dodge instantly, because they don't want to be insinuated or incriminated in any actions directly against the United States, which I also have to say, folks, is a little bit funny, because the United States does not pick a bone at all over the past several years in supporting Ukraine with intelligence and military equipment blatantly in the face of the Russians. But at the same time, when the Russians see that we're about to get involved in a conflict somewhere, instead of just blatantly supporting our enemies, they back off and run for the hills because they're that scared of the United States pointing the guns at them. So once again, showing us who really holds the cards in between the United States and Russia. It's us, not them, because they're far more scared of us in any real scenario than we are of the Russians. But at the same time, though, we did get some more developments out of Venezuela over the course of the day that were quite interesting. Before we get on into that question that we've asked all of y'all, I do want to give y'all a little bit more information that we did get out of the area, just to give y'all a clearer picture, so that way you can decide what y'all are thinking right now about this. Moving us into Caracas for a brief moment, we did get to hear that according to the Venezuelan Ministry of the Interior, they have stated, be ready, because an action could happen at any hour, making it fairly clear that they at least believe that they're about to get bombed any minute now. We also were able to hear that Maduro apparently gave another offer to the United States. Maduro privately offered the United States access to the largest supply of oil reserves, about 300 million barrels, to avoid, well, actually 300 billion barrels, to avoid a military confrontation. The president initially rejected the deal, but a senior official now says those talks may still be alive, and the deployment of the aircraft carrier is probably meant to pressure Maduro for more leverage in the negotiations. So at the moment, at least according to a statement from a senior official that was not named, apparently this is all being done to leverage the Venezuelans in a negotiation, because we all know making deals with a absolutely stupid dictatorship really makes a lot of sense and will work incredibly well. And so, Matthew, what are you thinking about this? And also, what are the folks out there in the audience thinking about this? Are they thinking that strikes are going to happen later, tonight, or that there's a 50-50 chance of it? And what are you thinking as well?
All right. So we did hear from the Venezuelan opposition leader. They said the decisive hour is imminent. Obviously, that seems to indicate action's coming, but once again, it's sort of vague at the same time. So will strikes happen tonight? And it looks like 34% said no, strikes will happen later, while 29% said it's a 50-50 chance of it, and 28% said yes, strikes will happen tonight. So the night is still very young. In Venezuelan time, it's about 9:46 p.m. their time. So it's still very early in the night. It could happen in the morning hours or anything like that. I'll be totally honest, I did predict yesterday that strikes were going to happen at some point tonight. I am starting to get a cold feeling in my gut telling me that maybe it might not happen tonight. It could turn out to be true still, but my gut is kind of leaning the opposite direction now that maybe it will not be tonight. But once again, it's all speculation. We're trying to make our best guesses based on the information that we have, which is not very much, but it seems to be that most people believe it is imminent. So imminent is a subjective thing. It could mean tonight, could mean tomorrow, could mean weeks from now. There's no telling. So I'm going to say a 50-50 chance. I'm on the 29%. I'm not totally cold on the idea of it happening tonight, but at the same time, though, I'm not super confident on it either at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I think that there is a good chance I would be with 33%. Strikes are going to happen later. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. We put out some very ballpark predictions last night. Matthew put out one stating that the attacks were going to happen Saturday night, which is tonight, or early in Sunday morning, within the dark hours of Sunday morning, not during the sunlight. Or the daylight, as people call it. I stated that the attacks were going to happen most likely the next night after, on Sunday night, at some point. I would be entirely honest with y'all, I don't even think both of our predictions were accurate in that degree. I think, to be entirely honest with y'all, these strikes might happen next weekend, or the weekend after that. It's probably going to be a little bit down the road, because there still has to be a little bit of preparatory time for the carrier strike group and all of the assets within the area, if strikes are to be conducted, to get on the same page, to have the battle plans issued to the commanders of the 22nd BU, the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, the VMFA 223, the USS Gerald R. Ford, and all of its carrier groups that are on board the aircraft carrier, and the endless amount of forces that we have within the region. They all have to get their marching orders, in a sense, and that takes a good amount of time to collaborate all that, get everyone on the same page, and then have all of that go down the chain of command, down to the smallest level of command, at least that would really matter too much, which would be like a battalion level command, and then go all the way back up to the top, to whatever commander is commanding those units, like the 22nd BU, so that way they know that their units are understanding their orders and they're ready to go, and then the actions will be executed. So this could be happening next weekend or the weekend after that, but I would have to be entirely honest with y'all, with the messaging that's coming out now from Venezuelan opposition, they had to have been tipped off by the U.S. government that strikes are imminent at this point. It's just that we do not know when those strikes are going to be just yet. Of course, we never know. We're always just having a general ballpark and then having to wait and see when it's going to happen during that general time frame. So I would say anytime.
I would still be very surprised, though, if it happened during the weekdays, like, for example, Monday through Friday when the market's open. I would be surprised. I'm not ruling it out, but it would be sort of unusual for the U.S. to do that, because that will cause panic and probably a sell-off of some degree or another in the stock market, because, of course, investors panic when new wars start, logically so, regardless of how it's really going to affect them in the market. So probably not during a weekday, I'd imagine. So if it doesn't happen this weekend, it seems like it would be maybe the next weekend or maybe the next weekend after that. Because usually it seems like it would be late at night on a weekend, at least just based on common sense.
It does seem like it would be, and also the stock markets are close, so any economic fallout would be minimized by conducting an attack on the weekends. And also, it gives everyone something to look at beyond their Saturday night football. So, they'll also be done for that reason as well. Or generally done because Saturday night football's on, and a lot of people are going to be distracted. But still, I see some people saying, oh, no, the U.S. military, they can easily get all the war plans via Zoom or video link. That's not how military communication works, especially on sensitive stuff like going to war. Video links can easily be intercepted. Most communications can easily be intercepted. So the United States has to use a special form of an encrypted satellite communications network to be able to communicate with vessels and issue.
Signal.
No, not Signal, not Signal. There's actually a different system that we have that's actually operated out of Colorado Springs by the U.S. Space Force that transmits signals around the globe to different commands, and theaters to be able to give them the general understanding of what their orders are. And even still, there's a little bit of deference there for the field commanders because the issuance of those orders is a little bit complicated. It's not actually as robust as a lot of people would believe. The United States satellite communication system is only able to support at any given moment in time, right now at least, one pathway of communications from the president or the Pentagon generally to one specific command, and that's it at a single time. They're currently working on upgrading that to where they can actually be able to issue orders and have a link of communication with 3 endpoints at a time instead of just one. So it's not as easy as a lot of people would believe, or the United States is able to just, hacker man type on a keyboard and then send out 100 messages to everyone in a single command around the globe. It actually, unfortunately, does not work that way, at least for the moment, although it can if the United States would want it to. We can move in other assets into the area. And we have seen those in the air before, like the U.S. Navy's communications aircraft, which can help out with shorter range communication, or at least create a form of a link of message communicators to get those messages into a theater command. But it's just not as robust as a lot of people believe. So it actually does take a little bit of time to get these people on the same page. And also something else that a lot of people wouldn't know is that the admirals that are in charge of carrier strike groups, they're pretty much sent out into the world on their own for the larger part, beyond basic commands. A lot of what the carrier strike group does on a day-to-day basis is entirely up to the admiral that is on board the aircraft carrier that's commanding that strike group. The president can give them an order, or generally it's the Department of Defense that gives the order, but the Department of Defense can give the carrier an order like make all available steam to the South China Sea, or make all available steam to here, and be prepared for a confrontation in this scenario, follow standard rules of engagement. But there is not a lot of deference to where it's like a video game to where you can pretty much communicate dead on with someone and be like, okay, I need you to go here to this specific area, and I need you to do this and that and everything else in between, and here, there, and yonder, and blah, 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 and this and that. That's just not possible. So a lot of the actual command decisions are made by the admiral in charge of the carrier strike groups, which is also why there's a lot of politicking that goes into getting one of those positions, because you have to be one of the finest in the Navy to be able to become an admiral of a carrier strike group. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know. And also, I saw someone call BS on that. I got that from people who are in the armed forces, so right now at the moment. So if that's wrong, then I don't know what's right, because, some of those people work on those systems. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news that we have out of this area. As we have been able to hear that additional in-air tankers are moving into the area, we have been able to see that a KC-135 appears to have been inbound to Roosevelt Roads earlier in the day, possibly to help further expand the amount of in-air refueling missions that can be conducted by U.S. Air Forces within the area in preparation for strikes against Venezuela. We've also been able to see that apparently the U.S. Marines in Haiti, which I didn't even know that there was a contingent of Marines in Haiti, exchanged gunfire this week with suspected gang members, according to U.S. military officials. So I guess that the U.S. military in Haiti is back just like it was in the 1920s and 30s. So a fairly interesting development with that one. And also, we have been able to continue to see that a large buildup of forces are within the area, and the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group appears to be just couple of dozen nautical miles north of Puerto Rico at the moment, from what we would assume. We don't know exactly where it is, but it seems to be in that general area. So that is putting the Gerald R. Ford roughly about 500 to 600 miles away from Venezuela, which for that carrier is within strike range of the country. So with that, I hope we address that the best that we can, at least with the ongoing developments within the Eastern Caribbean. And before we move on into the rest of our news for the night, in East Asia, the Middle East, and back on in Ukraine, I do want to make sure that we take a little bit of a moment to say that we are entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many people being here tonight and enjoying the show. In 54 minutes, we've gotten 54,000 views on this stream. That is 1,000 views a minute, and that is a lot of people who are coming in here and enjoying the Enforcer channel for their nightly news once again. If y'all have been enjoying it and you're new to the channel, well, welcome. I hope that our news and reporting has been up to spec so far, and if you have been enjoying it, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. The link is in the description below, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I don't even know why I said the support on Patreon part, because we actually don't say that on streams. That's specifically for the videos, but beyond that, I hope that y'all been enjoying this so far, and in case if y'all have, we're actually going to give y'all a little minute, a little break, a little breather. We call it a Taken 5, because we're about to go into a question segment here for just a short moment, to where we will be able to talk to a couple of folks who have thrown in some super chats. This gives folks a little minute to be able to go to the restroom or grab a snack, and get right back here in time to hear the rest of the news without missing a beat. And so Matthew, what kind of questions do we got?
All right, so let's jump right into our first super chat, which goes to Cornic Barbarian, and he put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, Mr. Barbarian, for that support right there. We do appreciate that. And he said, thanks for the coverage, guys.
And thank you for enjoying our coverage and supporting it, because you make our coverage possible. You help us to be able to make this news a reality every single day, and we are greatly appreciative, and thank you wonderfully for your support and helping this channel keep on running. Nobody that watches this channel ever has to support it. We make this channel as free to play as we possibly can, but the folks like you who go over their way to support this channel help us to be able to make this thing possible. The support, while we say that no one has to, it is crucial and vital to our ability to continue to run this channel. Without viewer support, we wouldn't be able to focus our time full-time onto this channel and making sure that we put out the best news that we can every single day. I have to thank you incredibly for your support and the kind words, because you are not only one of the people watching this channel, but tonight you're one of the people who are helping to make this channel financially possible and helping us to keep the lights on and buy those wonderful $5 Costco chickens. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Biscuits. And thank you very much, Biscuits, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And they said, it's been a while since I caught a live one, and appreciate the great coverage as always, fellas. And I hope Utah has been a nice change for you. And it is a nice change, honestly, Biscuits. I drove out today during a little bit of free time. I had to sort of stay within the vicinity of the HQ, though, because just in case Venezuela popped off, we had to be ready to go live. But I drove out into the little area way back over behind the mountains and stuff like that, and it was pretty cool. Honestly, Utah is a cool state, and it's got very beautiful public lands in it, too. Very, very cool, actually. I like it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support and the kind words. The kind words! They mean a great deal. We thank you greatly for them. And I also have to say that Utah has been treating us wonderfully. And also, it's a good thing to know that you're here live tonight so that way we can talk about it. Utah is a great state, a truly incredible place. While Matthew was driving today behind the mountains near to Thule, I drove down to Orem and Provo. And that was a really interesting spot. Really cool place. And it's just really neat because these lakes here, like Utah Lake even, which is a lot smaller than the Great Salt Lake, are so big they almost look like giant inland seas. It's really cool, honestly, to see them. And I got to say that I have been having a blast here. I think it's a really cool place, and it was well worth moving here, to be entirely honest. So I got to say, humongous thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And as far as Utah goes, it's been a wonderful time here so far, and I think that it's going to continue to be a wonderful and incredible time. I've gotten used to the altitude. Luckily, pretty quickly. I think Matthew didn't even have to have an adjustment time. I think he was just ready for it immediately. But the dry air is something that Matthew is still having to get used to. The dry air hasn't affected me much at all, but it has been affecting Matthew a little bit, and that's why he coughs here and there on air. He's not sick, it's just the dryness of the air around here. So I wasn't affected by the dryness, but Matthew is, and I was also affected by the altitude, and Matthew wasn't. So it's kind of a bit of a trade-off, I guess, between the two of us. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Tripod Traveler said, why move from Alabama? Well, that's a good question. Alabama is a nice looking place, actually. I'll say, like, looking back in hindsight now, the forests are quite nice. But the reason why we moved is because when we're off air, we don't really have a lot of time to do stuff, and vacations are few and far in between. We have literally no days off running this channel most times every year. The only guaranteed days that we get off yearly is every single Monday of every single week, and that's not even really the case anymore. We're usually working on those days on other stuff that we couldn't do through the rest of the week. So really the only days that we get off is 1 day for Thanksgiving and 2 days for Christmas. So we only get 3 days off every single year, guaranteed, here on the channel. So whenever we have free time, there has to be a lot of stuff to do nearby that's really close. Otherwise, we can't do anything because we can't take any vacations. So Alabama, in short, has absolutely nothing to do outside of work. So once we would get done working, we would just sit around all day doing nothing, just waiting to work again. And that's a fairly boring sort of an existence to have, is when you finally do have some free time, there's basically nothing to do. On the other hand, Utah has an endless amount of things to do. When we're off air, you can drive around and see a million things. There's a million different stores catering to any kind of interest that you have. So generally, that's kind of why we moved to Salt Lake. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we're on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news at large. So Matthew,
All
what do we
right.
got? Oh.
All right, so this one goes to Cryptonaut, and Cryptonaut has put in a massive $100 support, the largest one of the night, actually, and a huge shout to you, Cryptonaut, for once again providing that massive support right there, and we do appreciate that, and I think that might be one of your first super chats you've ever put in on the stream, if I have it correct, but once again, still trying to figure out the new YouTube username change. Sometimes people that have thrown in support before, their name has changed, and I just can't tell it, but thank you very much for that massive support, and he said thank you for the best news coverage and the incredible knowledge.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying our coverage and calling it the best. You know, we're like a New York pizza shop. We get to say like the best pizza in the world, but we have the best news in the world. And I got to thank you so much for the kind words and the incredible support. And thank you so much for saying that we have incredible knowledge. Matthew and me, we like to think that we are a team and we work together to provide different kinds of knowledge that the other doesn't have. Matthew has knowledge of political science. I have knowledge of history. Combine those together, you get this show. And I gotta say, I thank you so much for the incredibly kind words and the humongous support, because you're helping us to stay on air and continue the greatest news coverage in the world. That's according to you, not me. Some people say it's the greatest coverage in the world. A lot of people have been saying that. Folks have been calling us up and they go, sir, here's $100. You run a great show. And I go, thank you. It's only the greatest. I already knew that. I didn't have to have you telling me. That's just a wonderful thing to know. But beyond that, I gotta say, folks like you help us to be able to keep this thing running, keep it on air, and keep doing what we do with everything in between, including the silly voices here and there. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best we possibly can. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night, which we still have a great deal of news to go through and a whole lot of it. So if y'all thought that the big news was over already, you were sorely mistaken. There is a huge amount of additional news to go over from the day. So moving us on over, as we usually do, into East Asia right after the question segment, we have been able to see that the Chinese have absolutely lost their composure. I wish I could find that little meme. Some of y'all may know the one I'm talking about, but it's of the character Dobby from Harry Potter, and he's sitting at a restaurant table somewhere, and he's like just spazzing out. That's basically what China's doing right now because of a single comment that the state of Japan made about Taiwan and the ongoing Taiwan situation. Several days ago, this is now about 4 or 5 days ago that this happened, the Prime Minister of Japan made a statement in a parliamentary session that if the Communist Chinese attempt an invasion of Taiwan, that would threaten Japanese security and self-defense to such a significant degree that Japan actually would get militarily involved in the defense of Taiwan against the communist Chinese. Since then, the Chinese have been just absolutely losing it over that singular statement, and it was really more so of an offhand statement in the parliamentary session than it was a full-on serious statement. It was something that was kind of quickly talked about and then moved on from. Today, the Chinese have moved away from their statements of don't go to Japan for Chinese citizens, the tensions are rising. Now they've moved directly to just threatening to kill the Japanese prime minister. Over the course of the day, Chinese diplomats have publicly threatened to cut off the filthy head of Japan's prime minister, Sanae Taikachi, which you can see right here, after recent statements she made which suggested that Japan could militarily respond to a Chinese invasion. They're literally losing it inside of China right now over that singular statement. And we also were able to see that the Chinese Foreign Ministry had to come out today and start throwing out their propaganda like they usually do, directly in response to the statements that were made by the Japanese Prime Minister. So, I'll tell you all what this guy here, Lin Jian, stated today, who is the spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry. He has made a statement claiming that Taiwan is an inseparable part of Communist China, grounded in history and international law. The statements coming after Beijing's protest against Japanese coming after Beijing's protest against Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on potential military intervention against a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. China summoned Japan's ambassador and issued a travel advisory in response. Two official actions taken in response to the statement made in the Japanese parliamentary session, while Taiwan's government rejected the claim, affirming its sovereignty as a democracy. The U.S. recently approved a $330 million arms sale to Taiwan amid the ongoing regional tensions. It's the President of the United States' first such weapon deal with Taiwan during his second term in office. So it does appear that the Chinese are just going off at this point, and I mean it's insane to see this. Usually the Chinese like to play the foreign policy game like they're playing chess. It's very slow, very meticulous, and very deliberate in their approach. And I can say that just off of what we've seen over the past few years with what they do and how they go about things. They usually have a formulaic sort of a pattern that they follow. This time, though, China just went off. I don't know what it is about the statements from the Japanese Prime Minister that made them lose it and go through this whole rigmarole, but this has apparently just pissed them off to the extreme. And this has led a lot of people to wonder what's going to be coming out of this, if anything ever came out of it at all, if the Chinese are going to try and conduct direct actions against Japan in the form of a war, or if this is just some sort of a verbal dispute, and this is China in a diplomatic way conducting a low-level coercion effort against Japan to threaten them and put them in fear enough that they never bring up the topic again and they pretty much abandon the concept. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So now that we're seeing China is escalating the threats against Japan wildly, might this turn into a military confrontation? And 61% said no, it will remain a verbal dispute, while 22% said yes, this will become very bad, and 13% said it's a 50-50 chance right now. So we actually have our answer. As of 46 minutes ago, we have heard that 4 Chinese Coast Guard ships have entered Japan-administered waters near the Senkaku Islands, if that's how you say it. I'm probably mispronouncing that there, but they're apparently on a rights enforcement patrol, and it sounds like they have gone into Japan-administered waters. I guess that's the actual territorial waters of Japan. So that's quite serious right there. So China, I think, is using the situation to escalate because they're currently having domestic political issues. So they're choosing this as a way to possibly distract from it. Because I'm with the enforcer. I don't really understand why they're taking this so extreme. It seems like maybe they're taking this opportunity to go above and beyond for some other reason. So seems pretty bad to me. But enforcer, did you hear about that news, by the way? Because that apparently just happened a short while ago.
I just went and looked at it, and I want to make sure to read this off for y'all for the official statement. A Chinese Coast Guard vessel 1307 formation conducted patrols within the territorial waters of the Diaoyu Islands, which is the Senkaku Islands. The Diaoyu Islands is a Chinese name for it. Senkaku is the Japanese name. This was a lawful patrol operation conducted by the China Coast Guard to uphold its rights and interests, the statement said. So it does appear that the Chinese have at least put out a statement making it seem as though this is a part of their sovereign territory. And I've also got to say that as far as hostile actions in between China and Japan goes, this hasn't happened in a minute, but this has happened a good bit historically. The Senkaku Islands actually are kind of in the same territorial dispute that Taiwan is in at the moment with the Communist Chinese, as the Communist Chinese claim that this tiny little speck of an island, or a couple of them really right here, are actually part of Communist China as well. So they have conducted Chinese Coast Guard patrols within the territorial waters of the Senkaku Islands and have had showdowns with the Japanese Naval Self-Defense Forces in years prior, but this is the first time that this has happened, at least in a recorded instance that I've heard of, within the past several years. The last time that this happened, it was before we were even covering news here on the channel. So this isn't anything incredibly new as far as like an open wound between the two countries, but this is new for them to be conducting that action right now. So this does appear to be, the best way that I can explain it, a low-level coercion effort once again being conducted against Japan. Honestly, the statements that they're making towards Japan are about as violent in rhetoric and also with their actions now as they are against Taiwan, because this is very similar to Chinese vessels getting incredibly close or entering the territorial waters of Taiwan at times, like they do, and also the foreign ministry statements that China makes about Taiwan being forcefully reunified whether they want it or not, and they can either reunify peacefully or on their knees. That's basically what they're doing to the Japanese government right now in diplomatic statements, and now with the arrival of the Chinese Coast Guard around the Senkaku Islands, it's basically the same low-level coercion efforts they're conducting against Taiwan. So this is clearly letting us know that this unpredictable, wild sort of action and statements that they're making actually are following on another formulaic approach that they have, which is when a country says something that they don't like, they either try and persuade them to join their side or at least back off and be indifferent to the problem, or they just start to openly threaten them and hope that the threat of force will be enough to get them to back off. So generally, if words don't work, the sword will. That's really how the Chinese work. So it appears that they moved on to the sword will work against them, and they're trying to threaten the Japanese enough that they'll get scared and back off. So that seems to be the case at the moment. So, knowing that, this will most likely remain a verbal dispute only between the two countries. It looks pretty crazy on the surface of it, but the People's Republic of China is usually somewhat measured, and they do understand that an attack against Japan would pretty much involve the United States directly against the Chinese, which is not something that they want right now. They want that later, probably, when they actually start the war with Taiwan. But having that happen prematurely is probably not going to be that good for them. So, they'll keep it at words alone in these normal sorts of provocations that they conduct against Japan, but they probably won't go much farther than that. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least from what we would know at the moment. And moving on out of East Asia and on into the Middle East, we have a lot of news that came out today. For one, going down to the Strait of Hormuz, we have been able to confirm that the blockade is effective at this point. The Iranian Foreign Ministry stated that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy has seized the Marshall Island flag tanker Talara after a court ordered its confiscation. Tehran claims the ship's 30,000-ton petrochemical cargo was illegal under Iranian regulations and says the seizure was carried out to protect national interests. Now, here's the problem with that. The Talara was sailing within international waters when the seizure was conducted. After the IRGC boarded the vessel, they then turned the vessel into Iranian waters, and once it was in Iranian waters, they technically seized the vessel at that point, although they had already seized it about an hour before, or several hours before. So we now know that the Islamic Republic of Iran is conducting an effective blockade, considering that they stated that the cargo was illegal. This means that they're conducting a blockade of the strait. So any ship that is passing through the area has to question or not whether some mysterious Iranian court out there has just declared that their ship is illegal and their cargo is illegal, and they're going to seize it. So this is going to strike the fear in God in every single company on the planet that is involved in the oil trade and has a ship in the area, because they're going to be scared that the Iranians might just start to seize them all that are passing through the area. Iran has absolutely no legal authority in international waters, especially against legal maritime activities. And this vessel, the Talara, was involved in legal maritime activities in transferring petrochemicals from the United Arab Emirates to Singapore. That was it. That's all it was doing. It was not involved in any forms of piracy, illegal narcotics, or contraband activities, and the Islamic Republic of Iran cannot take its own sovereign laws for its nation and its territorial waters and apply those to international waters. There has to be some sort of an international maritime law precedent to be able to conduct actions within international waters, and that does not exist with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, generally, this is an effective blockade at this point, and we'll most likely start to see that because of this, the oil markets will start to be greatly affected. We still have not seen an official statement, which is shocking, from the U.S. Department of State, considering the severity of this action, and we have also not seen really any statements, for that matter, from any other Western-led government at this point. We're not sure if they're trying to come up with a response or if they just haven't been paying attention. We don't really know, but it is still something, to say the least, that this has happened, and no one's made a statement yet. It's been about 36 hours now, and there's still no official statements on this. But a lot of people are wondering what is going to be happening. What is the U.S. going to do against the Islamic Republic of Iran because of the beginning of what is basically a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So also, by the way, Iran has begun sending out emergency alerts to the cell phones of citizens inside of Iran, warning them to prepare for war, not to prepare for dehydration, but to prepare for war. And what is happening? And 51% said the U.S. plans to respond to the ship seizure. That's why they're sending those out. And 27% said the U.S. plans to hit Iran nuke sites. And 15% said it's probably just panicking by the Iranians and probably a nothing burger. But it seems a bit interesting to me that they are sending out emergency alerts, not about the water crisis, but they're sending out alerts about preparing for war against the United States yet again, because they're in a really bad domestic crisis right now, and there's no real sign of tending to the water crisis, but Iran sure can fire up the wheels of war when they want to, apparently at will. So I think the U.S. might be planning on responding to the ship seizure. That might be it. They're very slow in responding to it, I will admit that, but I think that might be what they're about to do to this, and I'm with the 50%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 50%. There has to be a response to the seizure of the vessel. It's a violation of international law, and it also is a significant action, considering that it's basically a blockade of the most important passageway within the Middle East to all of the oil resources within the area. I also saw some people in the chat saying some interesting statements about this is why the U.S. striking narco boats in the Caribbean wasn't a good idea. That has nothing to do with this at all. Trying to make a comparison between the two is a stretch. The United States has declared these cartel groups within South and Central America as terrorist groups. And terrorist groups have absolutely no protections in international waters or under international law. You can blow up terrorists day and night, and no one's going to give a damn, because under international law, that's entirely accepted. On the other hand, that does not give a justification to the Islamic Republic of Iran to go and seize a nationally flagged tanker involved in commercial trade. That's just a completely different scenario between the two. If the United States says the cartels, which are criminal underground organizations, are terrorist organizations, very easy to make that claim, and then it's also quite easy at that point to go around bombing cartel boats, because technically under international law, they have absolutely no protections. On the other hand, you can't sit there and go, because the U.S. is bombing terrorists, basically, within the Caribbean, that gives us a right to go around and seize legally flagged vessels conducting legally acceptable actions within international waters. And on top of that, the Iranian courts have absolutely no authority to unilaterally enforce in international waters their own court rulings on vessels. It's not a sanction. The Islamic Republic of Iran has not sanctioned the Marshall Islands. They're not at war with the Marshall Islands, and also Iranian law does not apply in international waters. They have to find some sort of an international law maritime precedent to be able to conduct an action against a ship in international waters. If they said that the vessel was carrying some form of narcotics or was involved in terrorist operations or piracy, that would actually give them an ability to be able to try and seize the vessel in international waters. But at the same time, there is no precedent for that. They just said that the cargo on board was against the law, which the transportation of oil is not against international maritime law whatsoever. And so the seizure of the vessel is entirely illegal by every single metric. And not only that, it's creating a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. With that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, I saw Webba say, yeah, but declaring the boats as narco boats is completely arbitrary. It kind of is, but at the same time, you get a lot of leeway with declaring groups as terrorist groups. Like, for example, some countries don't declare Hezbollah as a terrorist group, Are they a terrorist group? Absolutely. But some countries don't declare them that, but we do. The United States does, and Israel does. So you can make the same argument that Hezbollah is a bit of an arbitrary claim that they're a terrorist group, because sure, they're a criminal underworld organization and they do conduct terrorist attacks, or just generally attacks on innocent civilians and such. But what is out there to say that they're unanimously a terrorist organization? There is nothing. The Russians actually don't claim that a lot of the Iranian-backed terrorist groups are terrorist organizations. Neither do the Chinese. So we can make the same claim that the affirmation that Hezbollah is a terrorist group is also arbitrary, because a decent amount of major countries out there actually don't declare them to be one. So I see what you're trying to get at there, but at the same time, there's a really significant difference between declaring cartels terrorist groups and conducting strikes on international waters against terrorists, or basically pirates, versus seizing a nationally flagged tanker involved in legal operations. Because that also means that any company and any ship carrying any oil through the Strait of Hormuz, it could be suspected by the Iranians of some illegal activities, which wouldn't be supported under international maritime law, and they could also be seized, which means that a lot of ships are not going to take that risk to go through the passage, and that means that the passage is now blockaded at this point. And also on top of that, once again, the basic rule of foreign policy is rules for thee, not for me. It's fine for the U.S. to do whatever they want in the Caribbean, but once the Iranians start to step on our turf and possibly start massively raising the price per barrel of oil, then that's our problem and we have to go deal with it. That's also really the bottom line of it, whether it's fair or not. At the end of the day, foreign policy isn't exactly a fair business. But moving on out of that, the Islamic Republic of Iran did also make a statement today that they are preparing for war in December. Matthew talked about that a second ago, but Iran did send emergency alerts to its citizens' mobile phones nationwide today, almost in an Amber Alert style, signaling it may be preparing for war in December. So they do believe that for one reason or another, either the seizure of the Talara or the nuclear program, they're going to be under attack and at war again with either Israel or the United States by some point in December. We've also heard that water rationing has now begun in the supermarkets of Tehran as of today. So not only is water rationing happening in the general water services and water utilities of the city of Tehran, but it's now also happening within the supermarkets as well, as they try and stretch the supply as long as possible before they begin the mandatory evacuations of the city of nearly 10 million people. Moving on out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, however, we also were able to hear that there is continuing instability inside of the Syrian interim government, as several people were killed today in a shooting attack at a cafe in Homs province in Syria. We haven't really gotten a lot of information.
There sure is a lot of stuff happening in Syria. We saw the other day there was like a gunfight or something happening yesterday as well. It seems like they're having some very, very big trouble. I wonder if some other factions of terrorist groups are showing up and trying to basically reclaim governance from the current guy who's very friendly with the United States, it seems.
Yeah, there was a rocket attack in Damascus yesterday. There was a shooting attack in the Homs province today. There's starting to become a larger amount of significant incidents within the Syrian interim government's control that is making it out there into the world. So it's leading us to believe that there's a decent amount of instability inside of Syria at the moment, and it's starting to bubble up visibly to where we can actually see it and report it on it in the world news. But moving on out of Syria, we'll have to see what turns into that. It's really a developing story at the moment. We also were able to hear a statement from the Israelis today that was really cute. The Israelis have now stated that they want the United States sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia to be conditional on the normalization of relations, according to an Israeli media report. Now, I gotta say, folks, how in the world can you make it out to be that your country has a say in U.S. weapons sales to anyone? Nobody really has a claim to that. I don't really know where the hell the Israelis are getting off on the idea that they can pretty much dictate to the United States the terms in which we have to reach to appease the Israelis to sell our own weapons to the Saudis. I really don't know where they're getting off on that sort of an idea, but that is absolutely a ridiculous one. We'll sell F-35s to whoever they want, whoever we want at all, anywhere in the world. If we want to sell them to the Saudis, which have been a massive weapons partner of ours throughout the prior decades, we will. I don't really know. Like, I'll be honest with y'all, this one is incredibly aggravating to me. The idea that the Israelis can lay out terms to the United States for us to sell our own weapons to another country is absolutely absurd. And honestly, it's like I don't really know if the Israelis understand the position that they're in, because it's a very fortunate one for them. We allow them to pimp out the F-35 which we don't allow other countries to do. They have their own variant, the F-35I Adir. Most other people have to buy one of the ones that we have on the showroom floor. So the F-35A or the F-35C. Then the Israelis sit there while they're already getting an advantage, which is pimping out their own rides, and then they want to tell us what we can and can't do, selling weapons to other countries in the Middle East. It's like, dude, like, and also before some people say this, that the Saudis are not allies of the United States. Let me go show you all what the Royal Saudi Air Force looks like right now, because if you doubt that the Saudis are an ally of the United States, just look at the aircraft that they have in service right now. They have 211 F-15 Eagles, 71 Eurofighter Typhoons, and 81 Panavia Tornadoes in service currently. The lion's share of their aircraft, their multi-role aircraft, are American. They also have the F-15EX, which is the most advanced variant of the F-15 in the world right now. It is basically the F-15's equivalent of the F-35 or the F-22 in terms of what it's capable of doing. So the Israelis pretending like they can tell us what we can and can't sell to the Saudis is absolutely stupid. I would have to say, folks, as far as that statement from the Israelis can get bent. We'll sell our weapons to whoever the hell we want, and they either can like that or not, and if they don't like that, they can find someone else to buy their weapons from, and there's not really a lot of people out there that are willing to sell to the Israelis. So
Also, it's like, if Israel can tell us who we can sell our weapons to, then we need to be able to tell the leader of Israel that he can't just call up Putin on the phone and have normal phone conversations and stuff, because Putin is going against Western interest. Because the report was today that there was a phone conversation between the leader of Israel and Russia, which is obviously Putin. So that's a bit fascinating. There seems to be almost at least getting close to almost regular phone calls between those two countries, which some people are trying to write it off as, oh, look, they're discussing stuff related to the Middle East. But what is Israel doing discussing stuff with our enemy? I mean, that seems a little bit strange. They don't really need to be in contact with Russia.
Also, better yet, to dig a little deeper here, if the Israelis want to tell us who we can and can't sell our own weapons to, that we have the proprietary technology to, and we built the entire weapon system here in the United States from the ground up, then we ought to go into Israel and tell them to open up that corruption case against Netanyahu and see where that goes. Since they think they can run our weapons cells, we'll run their judicial system for them as well, just to make sure that it's fair. But that is just ridiculous. I haven't seen a statement that stupid in my life, and that is ridiculous to think that they would even have a say at all in who we sell our own weapons to. That's like someone coming up to one of y'all, and it's just some random person, like Joe down the street who's your neighbor, and Joe comes up to you and tells you, hey, I don't like you selling your car to Randy over there. I don't want you selling your car to Randy unless you meet my terms. Who the hell is this guy to tell you that? You tell him to get lost. Yeah, I'll sell my car to whoever the hell I want. This is my car. You got no stake in this damn thing. And that's what we should be saying about this. This is just insane. But moving on from that, and on out of the Israeli news for the day, we are going to be moving on out of the Middle East and on up into Europe. But before we move on into Europe, we do have a very interesting and a very well thought out and spoken poll, as the Iranians did seize the oil tanker Talara, which is a Marshall Islands flag tanker within the Strait of Hormuz just yesterday, announced it officially today, and the West has remained completely silent on this. A lot of people are wondering why. And Matthew, what are people's comments on why the West has been so silent on this, and what are you thinking as well?
All right. So why is the West going so quiet about this? Because the West knows it happened. We literally had a drone above the actual ship itself when this was being hijacked. So we're not unfamiliar with the situation, but it seems like the West doesn't want to make a comment on it for some reason. So why is that the case? And 63% said a plan is already in motion on Iran, and that's why the West is remaining silent, while 21% said they don't plan on responding, and 7% said it's probably not worth responding. So I'm with the 63%. I think a plan is already in motion. That's why Iran's sending out emergency alerts to their people, because they know something is coming soon. I think that a plan is probably already in motion, and the U.S. does not want to basically show our cards by making a big deal about it and also pre-warning Iran that action is on the way. So I'm with the 62%. Iran is in deep trouble, not just on the domestic front, but also on the geopolitical front as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree with the 62% as well. There is most likely a plan already being formulated, most likely within the DoD at the moment. So we'll probably see that there is an official diplomatic announcement about the development here soon, and there will be an official military response, most likely by the United States, against the seizure of the vessel within the Strait of Hormuz. So I would have to be with the 62%. 100% in agreement, and I hope that statement comes out probably tomorrow, I would hope. So, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And moving on from that, folks, it's now time for us, because we've made it all the way around the world in 70 days or so, it's time for us to make it all the way back up into Ukraine and to cover the ongoing war. Now, good news, the United States and everyone else has been flying a humongous number of recon flights within the area. Today, 3 NATO AWACS aircraft were conducting reconnaissance flights looking into Russian forces in the area. Here were all 3 of them that were around the area of Crimea over the course of the day. One of them, I believe this is a U.S. Army Beach King Air. Another one was a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon. And there was another unknown aircraft that also appears to have been conducting surveillance orbits within the area. So it does seem that there were 3 aircraft, most of them affiliated with the United States Army or Navy, that were conducting surveillance around the area of Crimea. It's believed they were feeding the intelligence directly to the Ukrainians about what is there or how successful their prior strikes have been inside the Crimean Peninsula. Either way, it does appear that the United States is getting pretty heavy in the intelligence provisions game to the state of Ukraine. And at a perfect time, the Russians have finally seem to have responded to the Ukrainian attack on Novorossiysk that happened a couple of days ago. And they fired 3, I'm not kidding folks, 3 hypersonic missiles into Ukraine. The Khinzal missile, aka the Flying Crayola. The Khinzal missile was Russia's first hypersonic missile. It is a modified Iskander-M, meaning that it really isn't hypersonic, and it hardly is hypersonic, but it is technically a hypersonic. And the Russians fired off 3 of these in Ukraine last night. Quite a large number compared to the norm. And so it's believed that these were fired off in response to the attack on Novorossiysk. And a lot of people, they shiver in their timbers when they hear the name hypersonic. Oh God! And people freak out. And of course, the Ukrainians panicked a great deal. They went, oh my God! And then they went, oh, it's nothing. It's no big deal. They shot down 2 out of the 3 that were fired into Ukraine last night. Only one of them made it through the air defense and ended up hitting its target. The other 2 were shot down. So 66% of all of the hypersonics that were fired into the Russian Federation, well, into the state of Ukraine, correction, were actually shot down successfully by Patriot air defense batteries over the course of the attack. So a pretty decent interception rate. Unfortunately, however, out of the 135 drones that were fired in the country, only 91 of them were shot down. This is one of the lower interception rates for drones that we've seen in prior attacks, but still, the fact that they shot down 2 out of the 3 of the technically hypersonic missiles that were fired at them overnight is a pretty decent interception rate, considering that we did not see Israeli air defense systems ever intercept the Iranian hypersonics, which were the Fata 1s and the Fata 2s in the 12-day war. So the Ukrainians are a step ahead, and it does show that the Patriots are honestly one of the best large caliber air defense systems out there in the world right now. But moving on from that news and on into our actual frontline news, which was quite wild today, I will say, we are going to be moving into our location unknowns. We are able to see that the Russians have introduced proprietary technology. I call it the sack. And you know, there was once a guy who in the Russian army got one of these, and he had this little statue of a golden man, and he put it inside of the sack, and he called it Gold Man Sacks. It was quite an interesting development. But here's the clip.
Oh, look, it's wait a minute, it only covers your back? What's the point of that?
I don't even know. Like, it doesn't even cover your legs.
It's like even if you're crouched down or something, your entire front body's exposed. So what's the point of only having camouflage for your back? It's like the enemy should be in front of you anyway, not behind you.
Dude, they plan on running, man. They plan on getting out of there. Man, I don't even, like, and also, man, who in the world's going to look at this and go, why, yes, the giant green square running through the field with 2 clearly visible legs is obviously not a Russian. Like, no one's going to think that. This guy's going to get hit by an FPV. Also, in our next clip in our location unknowns, we also got to see that the Ukrainians are now going to be mass-producing these, which look like something straight out of Anduril. These are the Octopus Interceptor drones, which have been designed to counter Shahed attacks, with 3 manufacturers already producing and 11 more are preparing assembly lines. So they are going to be mass producing these in humongous amounts. The system operates at night under electronic jamming and at low altitude, conditions that complicate interception with standard air defense assets, and Ukraine developed and combat tested the technology before scaling to serial production. Russia regularly launches Shaheds in large groups to strain air defenses and strike Ukrainian cities, energy facilities, and critical infrastructure. The Iranian-origin kamikaze drones have become a persistent threat to civilian areas across the country, and the octopus is going to be putting that down generally. I also got to say, folks, that, you know, I gotta take a minute to kind of like roast the Ukrainians on this for a minute. Why in the world did they call their weapons the silliest animals imaginable, like the flamingo and the octopus? You know, like when you think about other people who've called things after animals, you know, you think of like the Germans from World War II. I mean, they had like the tiger and the panther and the king tiger and the elephant and you know, stuff like that. And they sounded like pretty ominous, you know, it was like vicious predators. The Ukrainians will be like the octopus, the Shetland pony, the flamingo. Like, it's like, man, they're destroying the Russians with like meme named weapons, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, they have a whole different naming convention. They kind of name stuff like innocuous names that really don't have much like intimidation factor behind it. But it honestly kind of makes for like a really neat thing because these things are obviously pretty potent. They're pretty deadly and they do the job well. So it's like, you know, like the Flamingo, for example. The Flamingo is like a 1-ton warhead, massive missile, but you call it a Flamingo. So it's almost like a joke, but kind of not a joke. I actually don't mind the naming conventions, actually.
But you know what I would have called this thing, Matthew? I would have called it the peregrine, like a peregrine falcon. Because it's basically going up there and swooping these other birds out of the sky just like a peregrine falcon would.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds like something a U.S. defense company would probably do. And also, they'd probably jack the price up by probably like 30 more times or something to go with the name, of course, because they probably had to spend a couple million just to develop the name.
Yeah, you know, or they could come up with something that's like nationally relevant to them historically. You know, like the Cossack or something like that. You know, like the cool name. Like I'll say these names are pretty decent, but at the same time, when you really sit down and think about them, it's like, why are they calling them like these names? Because you know, when you think of an octopus, you think of like that one octopus from that cartoon, like Harold the Octopus or whoever he was when I was a kid. And when you think of flamingos, you think of like the lawn flamingos. You know, you don't really think of anything formidable. It's like a kind of like a meme thing. But anyways, still, it's a really cool interceptor, and it is going to be saving a lot of lives, hopefully, once this thing is put into mass production, which it generally is almost already in mass production at this point. We also got to see the Russian casualty reports over the past 24 hours, and they were pretty decent. 2 Bobcats!
Oh, wow, look at that. 2 Bobcats in one day. That's fantastic right there. That's a good day, but tell us more.
And we have been able to hear from Miss Decent, keeper of the records, the greatest keeper of the records out there in the world, mind you, that all categories except troop losses are above the 7-day averages. Big increase in tanks and APCs or AFVs, and a 490 plus drones is the 8th highest daily loss of the war. And so, let's get on into those figures. 1,000 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 19 APCs, 90 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 20 artillery pieces, 490 drones, 1 MLRS, which was a Uragan, which is incredibly rare, 14 cruise missiles, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, wildly impressive to see, and good to know that the losses are continuing to remain high. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces are fighting 2 major battles at this point on the front lines. The Battle of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, and the Battle of Kupyansk. The Battle of Kupyansk isn't really talked a lot or covered on most channels, including ours, because there's not a lot of video or picture evidence about it, and it's generally in a forgotten front, is the best way to put it. But still, the battle for Kupyansk has become quite heavy. At the moment, Russian Federation forces are within the northern area of the city, and have been conducting an incredibly slow and arduous advance across the Oskol River to make it north of Kupyansk, and then eventually start to push south directly through the city and another meat grinder, in the hopes that they'll be able to push the Ukrainians out of the built-up settlement of Kupyansk and then allow for the Russian Federation forces to start moving southwards on the eastern banks of the Oskol River. The Ukrainians have been engaged in heavy firefights today with the Russians that have made it into the northern area of the city, and we were able to see a little bit of that from the 8th SOF Regiment within the city of Kupyansk earlier today. And so, here is the clip. We can hear heavy firefights happening as the Ukrainians rapidly advance across the street to get to the firefight. We now see them engaging in close-range battles with the Russians within the very buildings of the northern part of Kupyansk city. down suppressive fire on the Russians. And we can also see another one protecting their rear for Russians that may try and come up to the windows and surprise them from the side. The Ukrainians attempt to continue to fire into the building, although smoke is obscuring the vision, as grenades continue to be flung in through the windows. We now see the fire team moving out past the building while laying down suppressive fire at it while running.
That's a wild maneuver there, just to run through the street while they're getting shot at like that. I mean, even with suppressive fire, that's pretty risky.
That was crazy, honestly, but the 8th SOF is a pretty crazy unit. They are dedicated to the battle, and that firefight right there certainly shows it, considering that they were pretty much within yards of the Russians inside the building, and not only that, retreated under fire while laying suppressive fire in the midst of running. A pretty wild sort of a battle to see in the middle of the city. But moving on out of Kupyansk and further south and towards the area of Lyman in the Severonsky Forest, we were also able to see that the Signum Battalion, part of the greater, if I remember correctly, 92nd, if I'm not mistaken, was also conducting drone attacks against the Russians near to the outskirts of the Severonsky Forest. We can see a small group of Russians here already trying to make a run for it, but it doesn't appear that they were too successful. This guy had a shotgun. Why didn't he try and shoot it down? He just started running immediately. But it seems that it probably wouldn't have worked for him anyways. We can also see this guy actually trying to shoot it, and he didn't really succeed. We can see this guy hiding behind a birch tree. That didn't really work out too well for him. And there's also this other guy. I don't think he knows this, but that tree is not wide enough to really hide him. He was kind of like hiding his head behind it, but the rest of his body was sticking out. He needs to figure out how big a tree really needs to be able to hide behind it. Didn't really work for him.
It's like basically a twig he was standing behind almost. It wasn't even really a tree.
Dude, out of all the trees in the area, he picked the toothpick to try and hide behind. It's like, not really the smartest guy out there. Not the sharpest tool in the shed. This guy also had something bite him. And that was the end of the clip right there. But still, it does appear that the Signum unit is continuing to inflict significant losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces within the Severonsky Forest. Moving on from that and on towards the area of Volodymyrivka, we also were able to see the Ukrainian armed forces and the 5th Assault Brigade taking out Russians within the pipes. We all know that the Russians yearn for the pipes. Every single time they get a chance, they always go into the pipes. And we all know that everyone is a big fan of the pipes. Everyone loves the pipes. There's the Russian in the pipe right there. The itsy bitsy Russian went up the water pipe. Down came the Trojan to wash the Russian out, and there he went. Blew out both sides.
It's like those tactical bros. The ones that say, "Yeah, do you carry one in the pipe?"
Man, I carry one in the pipe. How many coin do you have?
Yeah. Do you have a cam?
Man, I've got the right gun if you got the right coin. Like we're in the medieval age. It's like, oh yeah, let me go call on my bard and my scribe and let's haggle over this price, my good sir. But anyways, you can see another one going in through the window.
It's really just looking around. It's just sniffing around like a bomb dog.
Oh, they found one. Well, not a good day for him. But it does appear that the 5th Assault Brigade was continuing to hold their part of the front. Moving on down towards Frodivka, which is outside of Milnohrad, we are also able to see more Ukrainian forces of the 55th Brigade working against Russian logistics that are attempting to reach the Russian armed forces that are on the southern part of the city of Milnohrad at the moment. I remember back in the day when Russian logistics actually used to use supply trucks, and now they just use a whole bunch of civilian cars. It really shows you how far they've fallen.
Yeah, and they're lucky to use civilian cars. Like most of the time, they're using these sketchy-looking motorcycles now, or something like that. Sometimes bicycles too, or maybe even donkeys and sheep.
Maybe even themselves.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes they're riding on the backs of each other. Sometimes.
Man, I've heard, man, that if the Russian Federation had a supply line today, they'd be riding that donkey. But anyways, moving on into the cross. Man, honestly, man. Oh man, I gotta tell you, it's like real redneck kind of logistics, like Bubba kind. I heard that the Ukrainians actually were blowing Bubba up the other day out there on the supply lines. It was a tough time for him. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see the rocky road to Pokrovsk made even rockier thanks to the 7th Corps, which is continuing their arduous defense of the city of Mirnorad. We see the 7th Corps' intro here. They actually have a pretty cool one. Oh my God! What did they hit?
Whoa!
What did they hit? That was a normal vehicle, and it went up. That's the vehicle right there. You can hardly even see it. And when they hit it, I guess it was carrying a bunch of ammo. I guess I don't know.
Whatever it was, it went up spectacularly. I must admit. Oh wow!
Oh
again.
my God! It went up again, and it was larger. What the hell? Oh my God! Look at that.
That's crazy. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Oh my God. Well, the whole street's gone now. Like it's just a giant crater. And there's the 7th Corps' outro. Pretty cool. But anyways, nice to see that they were able to knock out whatever vehicle that was, carrying whatever it was carrying. Moving on out of that, we also got to see that the Ukrainians did also repel another attempted mechanized assault towards Pokrovsk on the southern front near to Shevchenko today as well. When you see this was published by the Phoenix unit. We see them showing that a Russian vehicle, a Russian car, is down there on the street as a part of this mechanized assault. I remember when mechanized assaults used to have a large amount of APCs and tanks. Now they have cars and BMPs, so they're really getting a step down. Next thing you know, it's just going to be cars only.
Oh, this one's trying to sneak away. This one's like it's a shed. It is a shed tank. I'm about to say it's a barn tank or something, but it really was.
Oh, and they also got Vadim. I like how they have a PNG of Vadim right here.
Wow, they did a number on Vadim. Damn.
Man, Vadim got whooping. Man, he was taken out. But we can see them also hitting the engine bay of that tank, the shed, dropping bomblets on Russian infantry. And also making sure to double tap the vehicles below, just making sure that they're completely destroyed.
They really know how to give it to them, They bring it right to the Russians at the front. Oh, look, it's just 2 men on foot. That is not smart right there. On foot, that's not good, as you can tell. That's very bad. Call in a drone strike.
My fellow Americans, call in a drone strike. Man, look, that's the end of that clip right there. And what an impressive and amazing thing to see from the Phoenix unit. And they continue to hold the line in Pokrovsk to this day. Moving on down to Velika Novorossiysk, I also got to show y'all something a little rare. They hit an Uragan, which we haven't seen one of these in a minute, actually. This is a fairly rare MLRS to see these days. This is a BM-27 Uragan. And this is also a BM-27 Uragan, just on a more modern truck. But these are heavy caliber MLRSs. Gone are the 127 millimeter MLRSs of the BM-21 Grad, which is usually the most common rocket launcher that we see inside of Ukraine. This is the 220 millimeter Uragan. These have a range of roughly about 50 miles, although the accuracy is highly dubious. You may be able to fire out to 50 miles, but you won't be able to hit anything at 50 miles. The rockets end up everywhere. But still, we did get to see a very rare one around the area of Velika Novorossiysk, and the Ukrainians blew it up instantly. So they're going to remain rare thanks to that. Oh my God!
A little bit of a misfire. Look at that. That's crazy.
Man, you know what's even funnier? It went out backwards. Like, I don't even know how it went out backwards, but they should be going the other way. Oh my God.
That thing took off like a rat.
Aw, man, I was running. But anyways, oh my Lord.
That bird right here is stunting. Look at that thing. He's got the beak up and got the feathers down. Look at that. 5 feathers down.
Man, this was a POP. Hold it down. But anyways, moving on from that clip, and on out of the Velika Novorossiysk area, we also have one more clip in Kherson, where we were able to see the Ukrainian 426th Battalion hitting Russian logistics. This is from the 30th Marine Brigade. That was actually a Russian supply truck. Wow, how rare is that? A Ural 4320. We rarely ever see those anymore.
And it's getting smashed. Like, forget the museum. This thing's going to be the night at the scrapyard for a long.
Man, you know, I heard, man, that they're going to be creating a prequel to Night at the Museum.
You mean a sequel?
No, a prequel. It comes before Night at the Museum and the sequel. Like, at least in the
How are
story.
they going to do that?
Well, I actually heard that it was called A Night on the Island, and it was going to be a story about how the special tablet made it to the museum.
Oh, damn, man. I didn't know that happened in the museum.
Man. That was...
There's one for the books.
Man, I tell you, man, that's something else, man. I mean, you know, they did have a former president in that museum, you know, it's not out of the question. But moving on from that and on up into the city of Kyiv, it is time for us to get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this very day of the war. It was quite a short speech, but a good one nonetheless. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Peace!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні вже стартувала наша програма зимової підтримки. За перші 2 години прийому заявок було вже 500 000 заявок на 1000 гривень на кожного українця, який потребує підтримки. Дорослі та діти, і на сім'ю це відчутно. Кошти можна буде витратити і не тільки в цьому році, але й в наступному році до червня на оплату комуналки, ліків, українських продуктів, українських книг. І, звісно, можна буде задонатити ці гроші волонтерам і фондам, які підтримують нашу українську армію. Головне – оформити заявку через Дію або Укрпошту і зробити це до Різдва, до 24 грудня. Гроші мають надійти через 10 днів після оформлення заявки. Кошти на програму є, і минулого року більше 14 мільйонів українців скористалися зимовою підтримкою. Тож, в цьому році ми очікуємо теж масштабну користь від програми. Уряд України повністю виконає програму. Якщо потрібно буде додаткова підтримка, додаткове фінансування забезпечимо. Я хочу подякувати команді «Дії». Сьогодні вранці було непросто, коли пішли сотні тисяч заявок в першу ж годину, але система витримує, заявки реєструються, часу на реєстрацію заявок достатньо. Кошти будуть надходити на карту національного кешбеку, і це все можна оформити так, як кожному зручно. Я вдячний всім українським банкам, які роз'яснюють умови і допомагають. Доручив урядовцям максимально детально, максимально чітко давати українцям деталі програми і слідкувати, щоб кожен, хто оформив заявку, міг отримати кошти на себе і на дитину. Отримання цих грошей не впливає на нарахування субсидій. Зимова підтримка – це додаткова форма підтримки. Будуть також інші елементи зимової підтримки. Вже також зафіксовані на зиму ціни на електрику, на газ для людей. Фінансування на імпорт газу ми забезпечимо. Резерви обладнання для ремонтів після російських ударів збільшуємо. І Кабінет міністрів України має все це представити суспільству, всі важливі деталі. Я дякую кожному, хто працює заради України, хто працює заради українців. Дякую всім, хто допомагає. Слава Україні!
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all, hopefully, I hope. It has been an incredibly fun time to be able to cover the news for all of y'all, and we are once again absolutely honored to be able to be y'all's primary source of news every single night. Tonight, we were able to be the primary source of news of 14,000 people live and 80,000 people who have watched the stream so far. And I've got to say that while we only are able to see the numbers here on the control room, we do know that behind each and every single one of those numbers is a person who is heavily interested in the going goings-on of the world and the interest of the Republic. And we thank you all greatly for having been here again for another night, and we hope that you all found this show so far as the news reporting, to be up to enforcer standard and enforcer quality for the kind of depth and information that we cover every single night. We are going to be moving on into the second segment of the stream now, and that is the time where we get to talk to all of y'all. The news is effectively over at this moment, unless if the U.S. bombs Venezuela, then the news is going to be back on. But for now, the news is going to be over, and we're just going to be getting to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about, or whatever we come up with to talk about in the meantime that we think y'all might find interesting. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's now time to jump into our Super Chat questions proper. And we have a lot of good questions tonight and also a lot of generous support as well that we do appreciate very, very much. But because someone asked, literally nobody asked us, but I will say this. Today, I had myself a little something different. I passed on the Costco chicken today, and I got something a little bit out of the norm, I guess you could say here. And also, hello to Chef Danny B, by the way. He just arrived, just in time for food talk. I actually got today for dinner, because I only have, and just my routine every day, by the way. I have one of those Jimmy Dean breakfast things in the morning. That holds me over most of the day. And then I get one thing for supper, usually something from Costco to cook in the oven and have for a couple of days, or sometimes I'll get something out to eat. Today, I really did myself in today. I really got something crazy. I got a chopped cheese. Believe it or not, they actually have that in Utah. Chopped cheese, they say. That thing from New York that you see on all the short videos. I got one, and it was actually really, really good. I was impressed with it. And also, I really went crazy too. I got a measly slice of the chocolate mousse, and I have the chocolate mousse right here, right now. It's here in the studio with us right here, off to the right, the measly slice of the chocolate mousse. And it's actually pretty decent, but I think it might have been store-bought. I don't think they made it because it tastes a little bit too average or something like that. So it looks like chocolate mousse. It doesn't really live up to expectations, but it's still chocolate mousse. It's pretty decent. But honestly, the chopped cheese is pretty good, though. I wish I had a pic of it, by the way. Sadly, I don't. But Chef Danny B would probably be proud of it. But Enforcer, what did you have?
I had chicken Alfredo from Costco, and I thought it was pretty good. But, folks, this is a chopped cheese.
That's actually what it looked like, too. It actually had the tomatoes, lettuce, and the peppers on it. It was just chopped up beef and cheese mixed in with it. Nothing too crazy on the taste side of things, but it was actually like good comfort food, though. And it wasn't too bad on the cost either, actually. It wasn't too bad for a little bit of a change in the dinner from time to time, but pretty good.
This kind of food, folks, is actually endemic to the New England area. You can find this really basically anywhere in between New York City and Philly, pretty much being its home turf. Anywhere else from there, you're kind of like getting, the inspired version of the chopped cheese. But the chopped cheese is a big deal in New York City and Philadelphia. And another big thing that comes from Philadelphia is the Philly cheesesteak, which I'm a huge fan of myself. Very similar to the chopped cheese, but a little bit different. The Philly cheesesteak also has cuts of steak covered in wonderful cheese, and also with sometimes peppers put in. I like it with the peppers, me personally. But
they had that too. They had that too at the place I got this chopped cheese from. They had the Philly cheesesteak, they had the chopped cheese. That was the two most popular things they had. And I was debating between the two. I was like, Philly cheesesteak or chopped cheese? But I was like, I've seen that chopped cheese and that guy going, you can't forget the Bev. And he's like holding up the bag of chips and all that stuff and everything. He's always doing those chopped cheeses. So I was like, I got to see what the whole deal with this is like this and see if it's actually worth the hype. And it wasn't a real New York chopped cheese, but it was close enough. And it was pretty solid. I'd be curious to see how it compared to a real one, though.
I would be interested. And you know something, folks? Some people say, I think I just saw Bobby Garofalo say, the food is the same everywhere. And, that's kind of true for, the big joints like Taco Bell or Raising Cane's, which is, crazily enough, even out here in Salt Lake, and it tastes the same as it does in the South. But as far as the local restaurants go, from what I've experienced, nothing actually beats the local cooking. The local cooking is qualitatively better on something that is actually from that area. And so one day I would hope that we can go to Philly and we can go to New York City and have a Philly cheesesteak in Philly and a chopped cheese in New York, because that would actually be pretty interesting to have it. Because I'm guessing that they would probably be more authentic or at least better tasting, because that's my experience with barbecue. Whenever I've tried to have barbecue outside of the South, It's not real Southern barbecue. It just doesn't taste like it. Like the recipes and the knowledge, it isn't really there outside of the Southeast region to make barbecue like they do in the South. And that's one thing I do have to say, like about the South, is that the South is the master of barbecue. The little mom and pop barbecue joints that you see on the side of the street, they make the best barbecue in the country. Like I don't think Salt Lake City could even get close to having that kind of barbecue. I haven't had theirs yet, so I'm kind of just saying this without really knowing. But I don't think you could have southeastern barbecue in Salt Lake City, Utah. I think that's going to be a little, like, authentically, it's going to be a little outreach. It'll be close, but not precise.
You know, honestly, one of my favorite foods. Also, by the way, the place I got the thing from here also had like legit pastrami sandwiches. You know, like the type you see in New York from like Katz's Deli,
Oh,
like that
really?
famous one. They had like legit pastrami sandwiches, but obviously that was a little bit more expensive. I was like, I'm not trying to like go broke for supper. I gotta I gotta like budget here and stuff like that. So I passed on that and went with a lot more reasonable chopped cheese. But it was like legit like that stuff where they like slice it up like like they do in New York, the pastrami and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it tastes the same, but it looked the same. So I'd be curious to know what that tastes like one day. But some of these things though, it's like kind of like lobster and stuff like that. I'm not really a big fan of spending that kind of money on food because you can only eat it for like one dinner and that's it. I don't want to go broke trying to try pastrami. So it's like it looked good though. I like to stare at the menu and look at it and then go with something a lot more reasonable for the dinner.
I heard the crab is cheap up in New England, like in Maine and like Massachusetts, where they pretty much bring it in by the boatload. I've heard it's cheap up there. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard it gets more expensive the farther away you get from New England.
Yeah, I think so, honestly. Also, I see Bennett Martinez say pastrami is expensive AF. I don't know why it is, to be honest with you. I'm not really sure why, but it's always expensive. Like in New York, it's crazy expensive. I saw James May go up there. He did a video recently on it, reviewing the pastrami sandwiches, and I think it came out to like 30 something bucks for a sandwich. I was like, what the hell? Like $30 for a sandwich? That's insane. No, but it's always expensive like that anywhere you find it, pretty much.
Is the lobster cheaper in New England? I want to know. Let's see here. Huh, okay, so yeah, it is cheaper up there, but how much cheaper?
Probably marginally, because these days nothing's cheap.
Let's go to lobsteranywhere.com. They have the answer. And apparently the state of Maine, which is where most of the lobsters are, what do we call that? They're not fished. It's
They're
something.
harvested.
Yeah, they're harvested in Maine is probably the best way to put them. But let's see, Maine lobster is known for being relatively affordable in comparison to other types of lobster, but specifically particularly during specific times of year. There are several reasons why Maine lobster might be cheaper at certain times. But I want to know how expensive is it in the state of Maine, like on average. Let's see. So up in Maine, it looks like in 2019 there was an average price of about $26 per pound. I'll be honest with y'all folks, I never ate lobster enough in Alabama to even know the price of lobster. It was like an unobtainable food, so we just never really got it or ate it or even knew the price of them. So unfortunately, I don't know how much. Let me just pull it up. The average cost of lobster in Alabama. Okay, so apparently, according to lobsteranywhere.com, and this also is a pricing from 2019, in Alabama, it looks like the range was anywhere in between $35 and $50 per pound. So it's actually about half the price in the state of Maine that it is in Alabama to get a pound of lobster.
That's crazy right there. Now, do you know, just at like a trivia thing, do you know what the most expensive food is that you can buy? No, I'm not talking about Wagyu, by the way, because Wagyu always outdoes everything. But what's the second most expensive type of food? It's a seafood that you can get.
Urchins?
No, not urchins. It's usually king crab or snow crab legs. That's usually the most expensive type of thing, which I don't understand why people pay that much for because I don't know the exact price, but it's very expensive. It's more expensive than the lobster, and there's barely any meat. Like when I watch YouTube videos of people like eating it, like on these food shows, there's barely any meat to speak of. And it's like, what are you paying that much for? It's like just a little taste. It's like that's not worth the $90 or $100 whatever you paid for it at all. And then they have to like pour enough butter on it to give you a heart attack. It's like I don't know. It's like if you have to throw that much butter on it, doesn't seem like it's worth it.
And also, I saw someone say they have crayfish in Alabama, I think. We have crawfish. I think the crayfish thing is further north of Alabama and like the Carolinas and Tennessee and elsewhere. But in Alabama, I remember everyone calling them the crawfish. And I want to, like, let's see. Crawfish. They're the same thing. Crawfish versus crayfish. Who says what? Let's see. Crayfish is more common in the north, and crawdad, or crawfish, is more common in the southwestern region. And crawfish, oh, wait, here we go. There it said it. It said it. Let's see, where in the world was it? Crayfish, let's see, crawfish is farther south, although considerable overlaps exist. Because here in the south, I always heard them being called crawfish, and some people from, like, further north up from Alabama, they would call them, like, the crawdads or the crayfish. But the crawfish boils were really big in the south. We didn't really have them a lot. I think I had it once, and it was pretty good, but I just never really had it a lot. But the crawfish boil deal was a huge thing in the south, because crawfish are everywhere, and this is, by the way, what they are. They're basically like little itty-bitty lobsters, is the best way to describe them, at least with how they look. But I mean, like, when I say little itty bitty, I mean, these things compared to a normal lobster are like microscopic in size. They're very small. So yeah, that I hope addresses that well. And also another interesting thing, you know, because we've covered that on air before, Matthew, all of the different accents and dialects of America and the way they say things differently, like Coke, soda, or pop. And I guess this is one of those things, you know, the crayfish, the crawfish, or the crawdad.
Yeah, honestly, that is pretty weird. And like some people call it Coke, some people call it pop, some people call it soda, and some people call it blow. And you know,
Damn, okay.
one person that doesn't like that is a person called Bubba out there. They don't like that at all. They said and no blow, no blow.
Man, I gotta be honest with you, man. You know what, Bubba and Hot Dog Man have in common? They both like blow. But anyways, whoa, hey, hold up. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Interesting little rabbit hole right there about the different pronunciations of the crawfish or the crawdad or the crayfish. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one.
All right. So with that, folks, it's now time to move on from the pastrami sandwich talk and also the talk of certain people's preferences when it comes to certain things involving soda and also other things that we won't get into here. This one goes to our first super chat, the last segment, goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a $33 support. And thank you very much, Hal, for throwing in that support right there. Very generous of you. And that is the second largest support of the night. And Hal said, politicians may waver, but support from the LSA has been steady and true for over 3 years. And Slava LSA.
And it really is incredible, Hal Rose. Some groups have risen and fallen in the time that the Lee Spring Army has existed. And yet, through it all, the Lee Spring Army has only grown stronger over the years. I remember back in the day, we got up to a similar size of a group that was on the internet that was incredibly supportive of Ukraine, and that was an interesting time. And I think nowadays we are 5 times larger, or we're at least 3 times larger than that group was at its peak, which is really a crazy thing to think about because, you know, the Lee Spring Army has never truly died. If anything, it's only gotten stronger. And I got to say, that's a wonderful thing to know, Hal Rose, that you're one of the old guards who's been around pretty much for that entire period of time. And not only that, continue to support and help out this channel to keep on running. And you're also a huge heavy hitter on the Sunday night fundraisers. And we thank you greatly for being an old guard, a channel legend, and a hero of the fundraisers, because folks like you help us to be able to keep this thing running and make this thing possible, hopefully, for many more years into the future, covering the news from around the world, not even knowing where it's going. And that's, of course, why the Lee Spring Army's anthem talks about those futures untold and futures unknown. Because we'll always stand united together into those unknown futures that we'll be here to talk about and cover as they happen. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, if y'all are curious, because most people don't know this unless you live in Utah or if you've been to Utah, they call soda out here, they call it swig. It's like their top store. There's like a whole deal in Utah, and it has something to do with the Mormons because the Mormons don't believe in drinking coffee, so they've resorted to soda because apparently that's permissible. So they have like multiple different drive-through soda mixing places, and one of them is Swig. It's the most popular one. They also have a couple of other ones that compete with it, but most people have like a cult-like following for their soda shop that they like. So the Swig place like mixes in like stuff like coconut cream and like strawberry like syrup or something like that with like things like Dr. Pepper and different types of soda, which is kind of fascinating because you wouldn't think that you could really change a soda very much because it's already got a flavor, but you really can though. We've actually tried it once, and it actually changed the flavor quite a bit. It was actually pretty good, which is kind of surprising. Wasn't expecting that. It was actually pretty solid, but it's also not too expensive either. Like I was kind of shocked by that too. I think it's like $2 or $3 for one of those things. But also at the same time, though, I'm not sure if Utahns know this or not, but diabetes is a thing. So I don't drink these things often. I drank it one time. That was about it. I was like, way too much sugar for me.
Yeah, it really, it was a lot of sugar. You could tell by drinking it, but it was really good. And I can see why a lot of people make Swig a part of their daily routine. It was amazingly good. I actually got that one right there, the blue one, which is the Shark Attack one. And that was really freaking good. I was like, wow, that is amazing. Like the flavor of it. I couldn't even describe the flavor to y'all. It was an indescribable flavor, but it was a very good one. And Matthew got another one. I forgot what his was called, but it also looked really good. What was
I'm
it?
not gonna lie though, they need to work on their names though, because I felt a little bit sus ordering the thing called the Spring Fling. I felt a little bit, I felt a little bit sus. I was like, is it what? I'm like, you just gotta you gotta act ignorant when you say it too, like to try to play it off. You gotta be like, what does that say right there, good sir? No, and then you let them say it, and you're like, yeah, I'll take one of those then. So that way you're not having to be the one, accountable for saying it. But it was actually pretty solid though. It was like a Dr. Pepper with I think it was like coconut cream and strawberry mixed into it. So it was actually pretty solid. It tasted pretty good.
But you know what's even worse is Starbucks pink drink. That's even worse.
Man, I just don't touch that. I don't touch it.
Man, honestly, say that one is so sussly named you can't even order the thing. Like you can't order that with a straight face. Be like, yeah, I'll have the pink drink. Nah, you can't do it. I've never had that one. But
you gotta start acting extra belligerent too, like extra ignorant when you order something that's a little bit frou-frou like that. You got to be like, yeah, what the hell is that thing called right there? That pink drink. Let me get that. You gotta sound extra tough when you say it to try to walk it off.
I'll fix your shit.
Give me that damn rock gut over there you got.
Fix your shit. Give me a spring fling, damn it. Oh my god, I can't even do that with a straight face, man, honestly. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well about the swigs and stuff, because I don't even know why in the world we got onto this. We were talking about crayfish, and then we moved on to this. But interestingly enough, they have loads of these little soda chains around here. Like they're like McDonald's almost, where like the prevalence of them around here. But they also have other ones like Sodalicious, which I've never went to, but I've seen a couple of them, and I'm interested now in what they have versus Swig, because they have to be different to some extent. But anyways, with that. Also, apparently this one is in Spring Hill, Tennessee, so they're beginning to expand.
What? I didn't know they were in the South. That's crazy.
Man, you actually could go in here and go, fix your shit, and like it did go off on them. Give me a damn drink. Man, like it's in the South. Yeah, man. Oh my god, I cannot believe. I can't where are all the Swig locations? Now we need to know. Now let's open up that rabbit hole. Swig locations. Not now. Oh, let's see here. Oh, this looks like it might
Are we gonna get doxxed with the soda?
Apparently, let's see if this will work. Let me take
that dirty soda. Man, they better be glad that they aren't really deep in the South, because that had a whole different meaning down in the South. You said that drink or that dirty spray or something like that, had a whole different meaning down in the South. That was called lean.
I got that lean in my cup. I got that drink in my cup. Also, this one's sussly named the Vanilla Vixen. I'm not gonna lie, folks. The names could use a little bit of work in. Man, that one's probably really good, honestly, man.
It honestly does look kind of solid though.
But you know a great drink, folks, that you can get at Mexican restaurants that is truly incredible It is the horchata. Let me show you all this. Matthew hasn't had one of these yet, but one day he will. It is I don't really know how to describe it. I call it like spruced up milk, but I think it's like a rice milk or something like that. But beyond that, it is great tasting. I don't really know, like, the best way I can describe it is a really, really tasty milk. So if you haven't never had one of these, you've got to have one. They're so good. Though I had one time that basically was like milk, but most of the other ones have been great. Like, this is one of my favorite drinks these days. That's not water or milk, just straight up. But horchata is great, so I highly recommend this. So Matthew, you got to get one of these soon and try it. You will love it once you have it. But anyways, with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so moving into our next one here, this one goes to Cyprus 96, and Cyprus puts in a $28 donation, and thank you very much, good sir, Cyprus, for that support once again. And he said, does waiting until the weekend to start a war really affect the stock market much? And if it's going to crash, wouldn't the same thing happen when the market reopens on Monday morning? And thanks for all the hard work, LSA, and thanks. And Cyprus, to give you my personal opinion on the matter, which is, once again, it can vary. It depends on the conflict, I would say, at least in my opinion. The market won't crash as in like a 2008 crash, like something like that. That was a very drawn out long crash. It would be a very short term crash, but the politicians still don't want that because it looks bad. It makes it look like the American people are against the war, which sends a bad message. So they want to avoid that at best. And so giving it the weekend or at least 24 hours gives people enough time to sort of get it in their heads a little bit that a war has started, and they hope that maybe the panic subsides by Monday morning when the markets do reopen. At least that's the logic I think works behind it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the way I understand it is this. Stock traders are like cattle. Like, I'm not even kidding. They have like the mentality or like the mental ability of like an animal. So if anything happens, they just freak out. Anything that happens at all, whether it's going to affect them or not, they absolutely panic. I don't even understand the stock traders, because this is what happens is that whenever a war breaks out anywhere for any country, their stock market plummets through the floor. Why? No reason at all. They just the stock traders just freak out and they start selling everything, which makes no sense. Like, I guess they don't know foreign policy or anything. They just got to be deaf and dumb, because why in the world would you get rid of your stocks then? I mean, if anything, the amount of government spending is going to increase. So a lot of these companies are just going to start getting random contracts out of the ether, and they're going to be making even more money. So why in the world even sell your stocks at that point? The stocks ought to be rallying when a war starts, because there's some money to be made in war. I mean, like, for everyone. But at the same time, that's generally why they conduct strikes or actions for the U.S. at least on weekends, is so that way the stock traders don't have the immediate ability to react to what's happening, because if they have the immediate ability, they're going to freak out and tank the whole market. But if you do it on a weekend, the market isn't even open, so they can't trade, so they get to freak out without taking that out on the stock market, and then they get over their panic, and then it's just a normal weekday, and then it's a day or two into the action, and they don't freak out and tank the market. And that's generally how I understand it, which is probably a very simple understanding of the economic principles behind it, but that's generally why we've seen in the past that historically in our coverage of the news, the U.S. has always conducted its strikes on the weekends. And so
another thing that happens too, another thing that's a little bit interesting to me is if people know for a fact and they have information, what's usually called insider information, that a war is about to break out on a certain day. Like, for example, let's say someone is privy to information that the public's not aware to, and they know that the strikes are going to begin at Sunday night at 9 p.m. And they'll do what's called shorting the stock. So that way they can try to make some money when it goes down. They can try to make money that way. But that's called a crime. That's called illegal too. But it still happens nonetheless, probably more than we think. And that's a whole problem as well. So these days, honestly, it seems like it's kind of like legalized. It's technically not legal, but nobody really prosecutes it, at least for politicians. Politicians, in my opinion, based on my layman's observations, seem to do that quite a bit, and there's really no prosecutions of it, which there should be, because that's illegal, but they do it all the time. And war is one thing they do it on. And then, for example, there's other situations they do it on too. Like, for example, if they know regulations are about to be put on the meat industry, all of a sudden they might short some stocks that are in the meat industry, and then they make money that way as well. So it's just like I guess you could say, an added unofficial perk of the job, it seems like these days.
Man, it's incredible, truly. I mean, it's great. I don't think that should ever be fixed. It's perfect the way it is. I'm being sarcastic, by the way, folks. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to none other than Chef Danny B. And thank you very much, Danny, for that $50 support right there. Very generous of you. And that is now the second largest super chat of the night. And we do appreciate your support, of course. And Danny B said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. And I just added a Monte Cristo to my menu. And it sells like crazy. An LLT LSA. And also, what is that, by the way? Like, we get a picture of it.
A Monte Cristo.
Oh, wow. Is that pastrami in it?
The Monte Cristo sandwich is an egg-dipped ham and cheese sandwich that is pan-fried. It is a variation of the French croque-monsieur. The first documented reference to a Monte Cristo sandwich was in an American restaurant industry publication in 1923. From the 1930s to the 60s, American cookbooks commonly had recipes for similar croque-monsieur variants under such names as French sandwich, toasted ham sandwich, and French toasted cheese sandwich, though it is commonly claimed that the Monte Cristo sandwich was developed in the 60s in Southern California. Mentions of the sandwich by name in earlier decades and similar recipes appearing in cookbooks cast doubt on this claim. Nevertheless, the sandwich developed a larger popularity in the region, and it rose in popularity nationally after the Blue Bayou restaurant in Disneyland began to serve the sandwich. So it's basically a ham sandwich.
It has a powdered sugar on the top.
That's got to smack. Honestly, man, like
That's exotic food right there. That's exotic.
Honestly, man, this one looks incredible. Like, that looks amazing.
Like oh wow, it's got a 4.4 star review on it too. That's an impressive review on that sandwich.
Look at that one. Man, these look great. Like, man, honestly, man, making me regret that I had chicken Alfredo tonight. I would love to have one of these. And you know, another great sandwich is the Cubano. And have you ever heard of a Cubano, Matthew?
Yes, I have, and I also recognize it too.
They're good. They're really good. I like these. It's just a shame that the country's communist, but the commie sandwich is pretty good. Like, it's just a shame that no one in Cuba would ever be able to have bread, meat, and cheese all in one place. That would never happen. But at least for us in America, the Cubano or the Cuban is a pretty good sandwich. So, you know, with that, I hope that does address that well. But a big thanks to you once again for the massive support, Chef Danny B. And honestly, I would love to have a Monte Cristo. That looks like a great sandwich. I haven't heard about it until today, and now I'm gonna want one from this day forward. Does this one have jam? Oh, this one's from Disney.
Yeah, Danny said it's served with raspberry jam as well. That's a strange mixture of ingredients. It's so strange. It makes me very curious to want to try it because it's so strange. Jelly, powdered sugar, and also ham and cheese. That's an odd combo, like a kind of like a sweet and salty type deal. It sounds like something that would be like at like very high class like things or something like that. Like people that were really wanting to be fancy would get it or something. It does not sound normal.
What are the prices on these Monte Cristo sandwiches? Is there a place that sells? Let me pull this up. Monte Cristo, Salt Lake City. Let's see if there's any around here. Oh, there is actually. There's places that actually do sell the Monte Cristo here in Salt Lake, so you could get one. Let's see, and then on Reddit from 9 years ago, consensus: rude staff, somewhat half-assed, mediocre food. Man, every time Reddit in general did. Honestly, man, if people catch strays from Reddit every day, we do on Reddit too from time to time. But there are a lot of fans on Reddit that we have, and I've seen them too. But there's also a lot of people who they go to the cleaners on every YouTuber on Reddit. Like, everything gets trashed on Reddit at some point. Because I guess someone has a negative opinion of something out there all the time. But still,
I feel like Reddit Reddit kind of like breeds like a lot of hate, like for some reason. I'm not sure why, but the Redditors like to really just like go at it on everybody. I think Redditors just got those hands are rated E, like on Reddit. Like they're looking for somebody to take it out on something. I think some of those people might have burner accounts too over there. Like some people get on there and create like multiple accounts to go like do some like rage baiting as well.
Yeah, there's like really, I think it honestly depends on the subreddit because there are some cool communities on Reddit that are pretty chill and pretty nice to be on, but there are also some others that are just venomous. So I guess it's kind of like a representation of society at large. There's some really nice groups and not so nice groups. So Reddit's very similar to that. But honestly, I don't know why in the world the Monte Cristos were catching strays on Reddit for Salt Lake City. I don't really know why. But I'll probably read it a little bit more and see exactly why. But also, I've noticed, folks, that around here in Salt Lake City, people are kind of critical with the ratings that they give on restaurants. Have you noticed that, Matthew?
Yeah, they're nice people, but they are very harsh on the ratings. I did notice that. Like, they don't mess around when it comes to like rating like qualities of service. They expect good service. Like, and when they expect good service, it's like 2 or 3 levels higher than what we're used to.
Man, like in Alabama, dude, imagine if a Utahan went to Alabama. Dude, they'd be giving everyone 1 stars every day of the week. What you want? 1 star. Like, man, they'd be like 1 star instantly. I don't want anything now. Like, out here, people would be like, howdy, sir. What would you like today? And you'd be like, oh, well, you're really nice. And then they give them like a 3 star anyways. In Alabama, you wouldn't even get close to that kind of service. And so I don't even know what they would be rating stuff in Alabama. I guess it'd be like 1 stars across the board.
If we got a hello, how are you? That was like 5 star, 5 star, 5 star in Alabama. I was like, give them a perfect rating for that. They said, hi, how are you? That's a top notch service there.
And most of the time, you would pull up to a fast food restaurant in Birmingham, and you'd hear something along the lines of, what the hell you want? Like at the drive-thru, like every single time. It was nothing different. And then you would get to like the drive-thru window, and they wouldn't even tell you the total. They just stick the card reader out the window. And then be like on their phone or like joking with someone. Like solely that's also something that's a culture shock out here is that Salt Lake City actually has top of the line service everywhere, like the fast food restaurants, the actual restaurants, everything. We do. Well, I won't get into that. Like as far as like how we get around to eating sometimes, but still. It's much different out here. The quality is massively improved.
I remember the first time they stuck the card reader out the windows. I don't know if they do this everywhere else, but they put the card reader on like a metal pole or something. Like it's like they taped the card reader to the end of a metal pole, and they would stick it out of the drive-through window at a couple of places we went to. I remember the first time they did it, I was like, thank you. So I just like took it from them. Like I just actually like took the card reader from them the first time they did it, and they just accepted it. They was like, oh, okay. So I just took the whole pole and the card reader and everything right into my car, and I was like, I had it like literally right in front of my face, like trying to read the text on the screen. And then I realized I was like, oh, you're supposed to like let them stick out the window on the pole. They're supposed to keep holding the pole, and then you tap your card. I was like, okay, well, I've never seen by using a pole and a card reader on it. So I'm like, I don't know how this works. So I just did my best.
Man, down here in the South, they literally make you pay by poking you with a 12-foot barge pole. Man, like they have a card reader on the end of the barge pole and they stick it out to you. Man, like it's kind of crazy. I haven't seen anyone do that around here yet. But then again, we haven't been here long enough. Maybe someone does that, but I haven't seen that around here. And also, I see some people saying, "What happened to Southern hospitality?" I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I don't even think it really was a thing. Because Southern like the group that had Southern hospitality, because there were really like two social groups that existed here in the South historically. There was the planners, which are kind of like the gentry of the South, and then there was everyone else. And everyone else was usually dirt poor. And the gentry were just like insanely wealthy. So the wealth disparity was a lot like what exists in Miami nowadays. Like if you ever wanted to see what the South would have looked like historically, Miami is probably like the greatest example in a modern day of the kind of wealth disparity that existed in the South historically. You're either a planner and extremely wealthy, or you're everyone else and you had practically no money at all. So the gentry, or the planners generally, were the ones who had that Southern hospitality. They talked with that Southern drawl, and they treated people with proper manners, and all that stuff. They don't exist anymore, and they haven't existed, really ever since like the turn of the last century. So that doesn't really exist. And in the South nowadays, I'll say that the majority of people are actually quite rude in the South, more so than being overly polite.
Not like the entire South though. I mean, there's honestly the weird thing is this in the South. The way I've sort of realized it worked, the people that have money in the South are usually rude. The people that usually are, not really rich, you could say it. Those are the nicest people, like by a long shot. Like very, very nice. Like it's strange because a lot of people, want to go around and be like, oh, the backwoods of Alabama and stuff like that. Those people are just blah 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 blah. It's like those are the people that would give you the shirt off their back to help you. Those people are most of the time. But there's for some reason, like when some people get wealth in like Alabama and things like that, it like goes to their head really badly. And if you want to see proof of that, you go to one part of the state in the middle of it, outside of Birmingham and the suburbs, and you'll find that pretty quick. But no, it's not everybody though. I mean, there's nice people in the South. It's just most of them mind their own business though. They don't just get out and go wander around cities and stuff like that.
Well, I would agree. And that's generally what I've said for the longest time down there. But I had a run in with a group of people that I dealt with a good bit. Matthew knows who they are. That I always talked extremely highly of. And then just one day, one of them snapped on me. It generally seemed like most people in that group were behind what this person snapped on me over, which was running this YouTube channel. And then I was like, I was like, well, I thought they were really nice folks, but apparently they're just two-faced. And then I was like, I don't really think a lot of these people I thought were nice are actually that nice. I think they just put on an act and a mask when they're around you, and then they talk about you like a dog behind your back, I'm assuming. So that's kind of what I ran in there, because up until then, I was always telling Mandy, I was like, no, the South isn't all too bad. It's just the people in the cities. Once you get out of the cities, people are great. And then that started to change my opinion a lot on it, because like we lived in a smaller town in Alabama growing up most of our life, which was Wetumpka, a little itty bitty town north of Montgomery. It's right here, and we grew up there. And it's a littler town. It's kind of more of like a suburb of Montgomery, but still, the people there weren't really the nicest folks either. They were kind of like a little wild and angry themselves. So like generally, from our experience, because I saw someone say, the South is really nice, and I would honestly say Georgia is nice. Like most of country, Georgia is actually a nice place, and Tennessee is actually a pretty decent place too. I just say that you want to avoid Memphis, but the rest of it's pretty nice. But Alabama generally, like I would say that if you gave it a statistical breakdown, 60% of the people in Alabama are going to be angry and really rude, and the other 40% are going to be those very polite Southern folks that you know. But I'd say that a majority lean towards more so being angry. And also another thing is that they don't have like basic social skills that exist here in Salt Lake that you would think would exist in the South, because of the whole Southern hospitality thing. Like, for example, in Salt Lake City, when you walk by someone, it's incredibly common for them to say, hey, how are you doing? Or something like that. In Alabama, people would literally stick their chin up and look the other way while you walk by, like you're less than them or you're not worth talking to. Most everyone would do that, especially in Birmingham. And so, that's something that is really interesting to me, and it's something that everyone I know of in the South talks about to a degree, whether they're from the South or not. Everyone's like, where in the world did the politeness in the South go? Because it used to kind of be here, and now it's not here at all, mostly. So and then you have to actually like get to know people and really get to know them for them to act nice. But it really shouldn't be that way. You should just be polite to folks just because. But for some reason, for a lot of people in the South, for them to eventually be nice to you, you have to like build a huge relationship up with them for them to even say hello when you pass by. But that's at least our personal experience, and that's all revolving around Alabama, which is our South. And every person's version of the South is different. Carolina South is different than Georgia South, different than Florida, which isn't really the South, different than Alabama South and Tennessee South and all that. So that's just
different than Memphis South too. Like nice on the wrong side of town in Memphis is they leave you with your tires and they take the engine.
Yeah. Also, I saw LA apologetics say, now where I live in Virginia, it's great here. I don't like. There's been a lot of argument actually whether Virginia really is a southern state anymore. Because it seems more so to lean culturally towards Yankee culture now than Southern culture. And And I don't know, I haven't been there a lot, but from everyone that I ever knew from our extended family that we knew when we were kids, whenever they would talk about Virginia, they always would say that it was Yankified, and it wasn't really Southern anymore. So I don't know. I've never been to Virginia enough to know. I thought Virginia was pretty cool the very few times that we got to go through it, and I love the Shenandoah Valley here in Virginia. It's a really beautiful place. But I don't know enough about Virginia to speak on that. I just know family who would talk about that. And if y'all don't know this either, in the South, it's really common for the folks from the North to still be called Yankees. And that's really interesting because like in the family, someone would be like, oh, so and so who one of our aunts so and so married someone and he's kind of nice, and then like a granddad or a grandma would go, he's a Yankee. And it's like, what's wrong with the Yankees? It's like, it's like there's no difference. Like, honestly, like most of the people I've ever met from the North, they're actually pretty nice people. So it's like I don't really know why in the world there was like this stigma about the Yankees. Like I never got that.
And then you get that weird middle ground, like Kentucky. That's not really the South, but it's kind of like it's still a little bit like the South, a little bit,
It's
or
a border
something.
state.
Yeah, it's like a border state. And then you have people called tickle in like places like Kentucky and stuff like that. And they do moonshine. It starts turning into that type of Southern. It's like a hybrid between like Northern activities and Southern activities sort of mixed together. But the funny part is there may be moonshiners called that, but there's also politicians called tickle. And they're in some deep trouble these days.
Oh man, you don't want to know what they were up to. Like, you don't want to know what they're up to. And then the Westerners are just the Westerners. But it's really interesting, folks. Another thing that's really interesting is that a lot of people in America, they don't like a lot of people in America never really travel around, and that's mind blowing to a lot of Europeans that go to different countries every day because their nations are the size of U.S. states. But for the United States, most people rarely ever travel outside the United States in their lifetime, and if they do, it's only once, and it's usually to Canada or Mexico. So not that much different than the United States, especially for Canada. And a lot of people really don't end up wandering around or traveling around the U.S. a whole deal. So a lot of people in the Northwest have like this notion of what the Southeast is. And a lot of people have a notion of what the Northeast is in the South, although they've never really been there. I just started my way through that somehow. But that's a really interesting thing because a lot of people in the South, like you would say something like, oh, I've heard, like before I moved out, some people I would say this to, I'll be, oh, I'm moving to Utah. Why the hell would you move to Utah? Like, isn't that just like a whole bunch of Mormons? And he'd be like, oh, no, it's not a whole bunch of Mormons. It's really nice out there. And I'd be like, you ever gone to Utah? No, I've never been. And you'd be like, oh, it's a great place. You got to go out there sometime and see it. And, and most people never will because, you just don't have the time or the ability or the money and really not really the will to pick a place like Utah to go out of anywhere else you could go. Most people in the South are going to go down to Florida or the Alabama coast to the beach and go hang out there because that's a lot better than going into the unknown of Utah. I mean, what the hell's out there? Nobody knows. Everyone knows what's down at the beach. It's white sands, clear bathtub water, so a lot of people are going to go there instead. So it's really interesting with that when you think about it that way, because the United States still really is just a union of states, and most people from one state might travel around to the other states nearby, but they're never going to go a lot of the times across the nation to a totally foreign state like the state of Washington or Idaho or Utah or Maine or New York or anywhere else. So really interesting with that when you think about it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Tripod Traveler, who puts in a $25 support. And thank you very much, Tripod, for that support right there. We do appreciate that very, very much. And they said $25 for some sweet Taco Bell.
Hey, we love Taco Bell. We love Taco Bell. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping us to continue to grow the Taco Bell Fund. We'll cash it in here soon. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I saw Joshua White said Dugway's out there. Lots of fun stuff. I actually drove back toward, or up toward Thule. I think that's how you say the name of the town, by the way. But I drove back that area. Honestly, wild. Like you're really out in the middle of nowhere back there. I can understand why the army picked that as the proving grounds out there, because it literally feels like you could pretty much like fly whatever you wanted out there, and nobody would even know what was going on. It's that deserted out there. But I drove out. My intention was to drive out behind the mountains and take a look at the place because I saw that there was like a dirt bike, like public lands area out there. So I was wanting to check that out, and also like a shooting range was somewhere out there too. So there's those white government trucks, I think, right there. You could actually see those driving around. I knew I got close to Dugway when I saw the white government trucks lurking around. I was like, oh, okay, I must be near Dugway, and I was pretty like nearby to it. So there's also up the way there was like a alien like Area 52 cafe or something like that. I was like, I didn't know they like did like the whole Area 51 thing for Dugway. It's like I didn't know it had that kind of reputation. So that was kind of fascinating. But did you know that? Did you know they had like an alien cafe out there for that thing?
No, I didn't. Where in the world is that?
It's like if you go, you have to don't make the turn toward Dugway. Like pretend like you're going up to Thule, behind these mountains here. It was like some town right before you got to Thule, actually.
Oh, Thule Army Depot South. Cool. Sorry, I'm just trying to get up the road.
Make a right. Yeah, there you go. That's the way.
Step-toe. Man, step-toeing in my markers. Step-toeing. Man, like, I had to make the joke. But anyways, let's see here.
I think this is it. I think this is it right here. It's like an alien cafe up in here. It's like Area 52 cafe or something like that. I saw it like they had a mural on the side of the wall that had like the little alien like drawings on it and stuff like that. And I was shocked to see it. I was like, what? I was like, this has that reputation. Kind of wild. But it should be in there somewhere. I don't know. Like, is there the restaurant should be only like one?
Oh, let's see. Is it this one?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
That's it right there.
dude, it is. It is that one.
Yeah, I saw that mural today when I was driving past it. Is that a rickshaw in front of it? What the hell is that?
No, that's a bicycle with like the
Oh.
baby carrier behind it.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of fascinating right there. But yeah, Dugway is extremely secretive, by the way. So they have the like I don't know if they're contractors. Area 51 has contractors for their security, but I'm not sure what Dugway has. I don't really like I haven't researched it a whole bunch. I just know they do the chemical weapons testing and also they do flight testing of certain things out there too, mostly drone related. But they had the white government trucks running around. Also, if you go put the Google Maps car down near the Dugway like street, you'll see that the white government trucks were actually tailing the Google Maps car the entire way down the street. Put it on Government Street south. You'll turn the camera and you'll see the like the white trucks following them.
Oh, this one?
On this one right here. Yeah, that's it. Put them down there and you'll see the trucks behind it. There they are. Look at them. They were telling this guy the entire time. Like the entire time this Google Maps guy was like filming for the street view, that they literally were telling his ass with the contractors right behind him.
Man, I remember that one time we were at Brown's Ferry, and the white truck pulled up. Show me your ID. And you're like, why would we do that? Hal, they're not showing their ID. 2419, 2419. And they start calling up security. Oh man. But honestly, yeah, look at that. They're still back there. Let's go all the way down this road and see if they're still there. Yep, there they are. Like they're still there.
Also, by the way, like you notice that they don't get Raptors. I think that looks like a Dodge. Like zoom in a little bit more.
Yeah, that's
I
Ram.
think that's like a Dodge. I think it's like a 1500 maybe. I think that might be a 2500 behind it, like the bigger Dodge. But they don't give them Raptors out here. They don't get the Raptors. I think they get the Raptors out in Nevada because it gets a lot hotter out there. I'm not sure how hot it gets out here near Dugway, but they need something that can withstand the heat. And the Raptor, I think, can generally. I think the Raptor is generally more suited for that. And also, the Raptor looks badass too. Like you got to admit, between the Raptor and like the Dodge, the Raptor looks fantastic. So. They have a lot of security though out here. Like I found that out. They were driving around pretty far out from the base too. Like they were everywhere.
Man, honestly, man, this looks like the Wild West, honestly.
It is so cool out there. It's also very peaceful.
Man, this looks like the northern part of the Salt Lake too. It looks like that up here. Let me see if I can find a street. Oh, dude, look at this street, by the way. This one's an interesting one right here. It's like being out on the sand dunes.
Yeah, look at that. Is that the truck behind this guy too?
No,
No,
that's
no,
just
never mind.
this actually right here, this road that we were on, that is actually the old Central Pacific railroad. Here it is. This is the old Central Pacific Railroad's like track bed for their tracks that they had when they built the Transcontinental Railroad, and they ripped them up later, but they kept the like the grading and they just made it a dirt road on top of it.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So that is actually the journey that a train would have made in 1870 when the Transcontinental Railroad was just 1 year into being. This was it. So pretty cool with that. Also, look, man, there's one of those navigational arrows.
That's pretty cool. Also, by the way, I wasn't sure, but where can you go down that road? The road that the Google Maps car was driving down. Can you go down that road next to Dugway? Like, is that a public road? Because I get it. The security people get bored and they sometimes like follow the people. Sometimes just because they're bored or something. But look, there they are right there again. But
Man, they were waiting. Like they were like, where is he going?
They must have heard he was coming through, the Google Maps guy. That's kind of fascinating right there. But is this a public road right here that they're coming out of? What does that say?
Roads may be impassable from mud or snow. High clearance, four-wheel drive recommended. No service available. Be prepared. Damn, that sounds like a warning. Be prepared. But it is a public road. You can go down here.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was curious. I was like, I don't know what's public down here or not, because, you know, some of these places, they don't really market that well. Like, it's sort of like you're supposed to just understand where you're not supposed to go. So I wasn't sure where you were allowed to go or not. But yeah, this is public here. Honestly, I wouldn't be able to go. Oh, look, they got a cattle gap right here
cattle
too.
grade.
Yeah, you would definitely need a truck to go out here, I think, which I don't have a truck, so I probably wouldn't be able to do this. Also, look, there's the perimeter fence for the base right there, literally off to the right.
Man. And honestly, this is really giving us some really strong federal facility vibes. Like the fence, like the cheapest fence they could get with some barbed wire on top. Very federal feeling.
Yeah, very federal. Honestly, though, it's an improvement from other sites, especially out in remote places like this, because usually they don't even bother putting a fence up. They'll just put up like some markers or something. And also, you're supposed to understand where you're not supposed to go, because if you cross the invisible boundary line, then you're technically trespassing. So, you know, they have a fence up for this one, though.
Where in the world is that Pony Express Aunt Libby's dog cemetery? What is this?
Yeah, that's brutal.
Burial plot enclosing graves of 2 men and a child. Well, this is no
Sounds like a
dog
moving
cemetery.
company. That sounds like that moving company.
Man, 2 men and a child. Like
That would not be a good company, though.
Dude, I think I heard about that one. That one was in the emails. That was like the moving crew they use.
Oh, damn! I just understood that. That's wild.
But let's see. To shelter graves of her dogs. So
This is Harassi.
they buried the people on top of the dogs? I'm not understanding what happened here.
Josephine Bonaparte. They weren't related to Napoleon, were they?
Oh, nah, just like, and then Bishop, just Bishop. There was just some Bishop, and then Toby Tyler.
Canyons and her lonely, childless vigils here. That's depressing sounding.
This whole thing is depression. Like this whole thing is sad. Like, and I guess those are the plots in there. That is really really something. Oh, and this is a Pony Express station site right here. Look at that. They have a marker for it. And
There was places to pull over. They had these markers all over the place out there, but I couldn't pull over though because the shoulder was so sharp, like it fell off the shoulder into the dirt so fast. Like I would have probably bottomed out my Lada trying to get down there, so that wouldn't have worked for me. But it really is beneficial to have a four-wheel drive truck if you live in a state like this. It's really beneficial because there's a lot of places you can go if you have a truck, but if you don't, you're kind of stuck on the road.
look, wild horses.
That is something. Are you sure they're actually wild?
Yeah, these are wild horses.
That one was kind of mangy.
Man, they do get kind of mangy like that though. But they are wild.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, there's wild horses that live out here. Not really a thing in the East Coast, but a real big thing out here in the West in like the untamed wilderness. Let's see. The False Pony Express station site. Yeah, they got loads of these markers. The Pony Express used to come through here, dagnabbit. But that was really one hell of an adventure. Like, imagine, Matthew, us taking the same road trip we took in the Penske in the car, but doing the whole thing on horseback.
Oh yeah, I probably wouldn't have made it. I'd have probably been like, I'd probably just stopped a little earlier.
Man, you would have said the mail ain't getting there today. Like, you would have been like, and dude,
I was like, can we just fly this in or something?
dude,
Like
Newman,
pigeons?
man, Newman would strangle you, man. If you like, if you gave up, he would go, "The mail is never late," and then he'd like strangle you or something.
I'd be like, can we get Mike Tyson to send this mail via pigeons with the Fiji water?
You know, honestly, I thought you was a nice guy being able to deliver that mail. But you really just a rat piece of shit, man. Whoa, calm down, Mike. Nah, F you, man. You just a rat piece of shit.
You want to send it certified? You want to send it priority?
Wait. So the Pony Express posts are basically like safety deposit boxes in the middle of nowhere.
Huh. But it actually still works.
I guess. I mean, they got a carabiner on that. Is that how our mail's getting here to Salt Lake City through here?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm just kidding, by the way. It's not. Oh, look, a trough for horses to drink water. I wouldn't drink the water out of that. I think that's got brain-eating amoebas in it. But still, I mean, it's wilder. Cool, clear water. But wow, that's really cool. Oh, and here it is, all snowy like.
Man, honestly, this is like dirt bike haven out here. Like, this would be fantastic to take a dirt bike to it. Like, it would really be cool.
Oh, it is a usable post office safety deposit box. You can mail. And people be putting Bud Lights and all kinds. Wow. Man, that's like a goodie box. Like, man, on the side of the street, no less. And look at all these wild horses.
That's a lot of horses right there.
You know what? Let me go pull up the whole wild horse thing because I have a feeling you're not believing me on this, and I gotta prove this. Wild horses. Let me see if I can find the range of them here in America. U.S.
That's a song too. There's a big tongue over there on that picture.
Yeah, see?
We're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. That's an ugly time in history. Says, sir, don't do that. Don't do that.
They said, sir, they're going to ride you like Seattle slew, called the Pony Express, because this load is never late. But beyond that, man, but you know, it's just the innuendo. Like, it's just the innuendo. but see, Matthew, right out here, right outside of Salt Lake City, wild horse populations.
That is wild. I think Nevada and like the western part of Utah is like the closest you can get to actually feeling like you're actually in what used to be the Wild West. I think it's as close as you can get to it.
Why can't they stay in the wild? What type of question is that? It's like,
where else do they stay? And they're not going to the city at night. Well, they're going to go stay at a Holiday Inn tonight. Well, what kind of question is this?
Man, these are the kind of people who think that the horse walked into the bar and the bartender said, "Why the long face?" These people are the ones asking this question. I don't even understand it. But apparently Nevada is home to the wild horse, which really makes no sense, because if you look out at Nevada, I don't really know how the hell a horse is living out in this.
Well, it's got a pretty easy time. There's barely anybody around.
Well, yeah, but there's like no food, no water or anything, you know, and it's also blazing hot out there.
You know, that's how they used to conquer those horses and stuff like that. You know that movie, they'd say, no food, no water. And they'd make that horse like, they'd break them in and stuff like that and everything.
Yeah, I forgot.
Did they really do that to them?
Yeah, man. That's how they would like break horses back in the day.
That seems like a way to piss it off, honestly. Like, didn't we like domesticate the wolf by giving it food and like bones and stuff like that? We didn't starve the wolf to make it be our friend. What kind of friendship manufacturing is that?
Well, Matthew, you see, that's why the dog is man's best friend and the horse is man's biggest bastard. Like, that's why there's a difference between them both. But yeah, you know, the dogs we had like a mutual relationship with. The horses were kind of forced to have a relationship with us, whether they wanted to or not. So, you know, that was the difference. But still, you know, it's interesting. If you didn't know, the reason why there's a wild horse population is because the original Spanish explorers that came to the Americas actually would sometimes just, you know, swat off their horses in battle off into the distance to get them out of there, and they would end up getting lost. So then they would just end up banding together into herds, and they created a wild horse population in America, because horses are not endemic to the Americas at all.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so crazily enough, when explorers started to make it out here into the western areas, there was actually a little bit of a belief for a while during that time that horses may have actually been endemic to the Americas, because the horses had made it out west before any European explorers had made it out here to the west. So then they were like, wow, there's horses here. And then it turns out, after they started talking to the tribes and the histories and such, horses were brand new and only showed up because of the explorers from Europe. So interesting.
So technically, if you move to Nevada, you have a chance at getting a free Mustang.
Yes, like that is true. Like, man,
that is interesting right there. I don't think many people have considered that before.
Dude, imagine the Army recruiters in Nevada. They are doing the biggest bait and switch. You want to get a free Mustang or or a Charger, and then they give you a Mustang horse? Man, like after you sign up, you're like, what is this? I wanted a Mustang car. Well, you got a wild Mustang nag. Have fun. Like, it's like, man, it's like,
I'll tell you what, you get that Mustang, you get the top trim, the 5.0 model, the one with not with the Coyote V8. Like, you don't get the Coyote. This is better than the Coyote. This is the horsey engine, the legit 1 horsepower Mustang right here. Look at that, 1 horsepower.
I think a horse actually has more than 1 horsepower technically.
Now that would be redundant, and also that'd be contradictory, because horsepower is supposed to be a measuring unit, and if it's 1 horse, 1 power, it should be 1 horse equals 1 horsepower.
A horse can have a maximum output of about 15 horsepower for a short
That is
burst.
stupid as hell.
That is so stupid, isn't it? You would think that a horsepower would be a singular horse, but for some reason it's not. And I remember someone explaining this to me back in the day, why that's the case. But you can even see down here on Reddit, which is the key to all answers. A draft horse can produce on average around 5.7 horsepower on average. So what the hell is horsepower at that point? What is that? So horsepower is
what the hell? They have the horse hooked up to a pulley?
Dude, they had that horse working. They had that thing on that grind.
They were actually testing horsepower.
Man, so horsepower is a unit of measurement of power, or the rate at which work is done, usually in reference to the output of engines or motors. There are many different standards and types of horsepower. 2 common definitions used today are the imperial horsepower and metric horsepower. So now we also have imperial and metric horsepowers, which is making this even more confusing. Let's see. It apparently metric horsepower is around 735.5 watts of energy, and an imperial horsepower is 745.7 watts. The term was adopted in the late 18th century by Scottish engineer James Watt, who was a genius, to compare the output of steam engines with the power of draft horses. It was later expanded to include the output power of other power-generating machinery such as piston engines, turbines, and electric motors. The definition of the unit varied among geographical regions. So I guess in Mongolia they were called Tiger Powers, I don't know. But most countries now use the SI unit watt for measurement of power, with the implementation of the EU Directive 80181/EEC, which sounds wonderful. On the 1st of January 2010, the use of horsepower in the EU is permitted only as a supplementary unit. So then, this whole thing is confusing as hell, honestly, how they even came up with horsepower.
Yeah, honestly, it is confusing right here.
Look at this.
It's over my head.
This is the equation for horsepower. Oh, wait, hold up.
Honestly, when I'm trying to do horsepower measurements, I usually take like a notable sports car or something like that. I think the benchmark for most horsepower, like car enthusiasts, is a BMW M3. That's what most people base it off of, because most people are like, okay, is it less powerful or more powerful than an M3? That's just what I hear. Like that's the way I think Top Gear usually did it. That's the way I do it.
And also, man, the story about how the hell they even came up with horsepower isn't determined. They're like, a common legend states, and this story is, and it's like, they don't even know how the hell this came into being. It just came into existence one day. And they're like, oh yes, horsepower. It's like, this, I'll be honest with you all, I'm going to have to do like a deep dive on why this exists and what this is, because this is now very confusing, the whole horsepower thing. So apparently, Matthew, if you get a horse, you're actually getting about 15 horsepower, maybe.
Yeah, that's a bargain.
That's honestly a bargain, man. One horse for 15 horsepower. That's a steal. But anyways, with that, I hope
How
we
many
address...
horsepower does Lavrov have? Does he has 15?
He only has 0.5.
Oh,
Man,
wow.
like,
Got downgraded. He's less than a pony.
man, honestly, man, he's one of them feral horses.
Feral.
Aw, man. Aw, man. Oh, look, these are in Arizona.
Those things look nice, but I feel like in the wild they'd be a little bit intimidating. Oh, those are literally Mustangs.
Yeah, these are real Mustangs. Look, here's some more of them.
Wow. Yeah, honestly, they look like to be a little bit mean out in the wild a little bit. I'll be a little bit sketched out to mess with them.
Oh, these are in the plains of Utah, right here. This picture was.
That's crazy to think they're still wild like that.
Yeah, it is, really. I mean, let's see here.
Also, we got a lot of super chats to get to, by the way. We can't rabbit hole too long.
Oh, Matthew, we can find out it's over. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to none other than Jack Ray. And Jack puts in a $21 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. And he said, call all the really cool weapons comical names like Sunflower, Pansy, Daisy, Rabbit, Gerbil, and maybe the best one, Squeaker. So that way when they work, the enemy was stopped by some silly named weapon for added humiliation.
You know, I got that's actually a good point, and I nominate the flamethrower to be called the Spring Fling. And so with that, I thank you so much for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep running, and also bringing up that very good point that it does make it more humiliating for the Russians to get obliterated by a flamingo or an octopus than, you know, something that sounds ominous. So a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our next one here goes to Arar983, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Arar, for that support as well. And they said, for the Refinery Cats of the World Fund in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. I help with this channel to keep rolling. That is going to be supporting the fund to help us to continue the fund. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that wildly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from World Funding. And thank you very much, World Funding, for funding this channel as well with that $20 support. Very generous of you. And they said, hello there. And it sounds like Maduro is going to escape or turn himself into exile to avoid getting eliminated. And if not, the USA will attack next weekend.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. I think Maduro is not going to be the kind of Zelensky-like leader for some reason people are thinking he's going to be. Maduro is not the type that's going to live in tunnels like Ho Chi Minh to try and fight the wicked American imperialists. He's going to be out of that country with a suitcase of money as soon as he thinks that we're about to attack. That's my honest opinion. So I would agree with you completely there. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible and keep it a living reality. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang puts in a $20 support as well. And thank you very much, Mr. Bang Bang, for that support. He said, wink, wink.
Wink, wink. Are you Mr. Winky? Are you Mr. Winky from The Adventures of Mr. Toad? Oh, man, you're winking. You're Mr. Winky. But still, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And we always appreciate you being here. So a humongous thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, I'm just curious here. I'm seeing people talking about cars and stuff in the live chat, and also speaking about trucks. A couple of people buying new cars in the live chat. Very interesting, by the way. Cars are outrageous now because of all the inflation and stuff like that. Even used ones are crazy. But I'm curious, just out of a curiosity standpoint, what do people consider a good mid-sized truck these days? Because these days, like, it seems like everything's expensive. Like the little, not the little, it's still a mid-sized truck, but like the little Toyota Tacoma, I think that's the mid-sized Toyota. I think the mid-sized Chevrolet is the Colorado. And then there's the GMC Canyon. I think. I don't know if it's called that. I don't know a whole bunch about GMC, but there's a whole bunch of like that. So, what is the favorite midsize truck of the people in the live chat? I'm curious to hear that, and I'll be looking for it. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Shaggy Trip, and Shaggy put in a 20. And thank you very much, Shaggy, for that support. He said, Russia, as we said, only a year left, and last year was 2, and it seems to be coming true. And at this end point, is there going to be a coup? And if so, who do you think would lead Russia next?
I would have to say there probably is going to be a coup at some point that happens in Russia. That's most likely how this is going to end. But as far as who would end up succeeding in a coup, it's impossible to say in Russia. It usually is always the guy that you never have heard of, and he's too unimportant to know right now, and he rises up out of nowhere to become a somebody. So I would actually have to tell you, it's probably not going to be anyone we would know by name right now. It's probably going to be someone that we have no clue about or is so unimportant that we don't really talk about them. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And I don't want to say that as a cop-out. I truly say that because it was like that every single time anyone came to power. Stalin was the least likely person to become the leader of the Soviet Union after Lenin died. Nobody ever expected him because he held pretty much like a token role. He was the general secretary of the party, which, what the hell is that? Like nobody even looked at him. Nobody even thought that he was going to be the guy who was leading the Soviet Union. And then after Stalin died, nobody expected for Khrushchev to be the guy to lead the Soviet Union. He was practically unknown outside the Soviet Union. A lot of people thought it would be Laurent Beria or Molotov or someone else like that, and it ended up being Khrushchev. And then when Brezhnev came into power, Brezhnev was once again, much like Khrushchev and Stalin, out of the blue from nowhere. Yeltsin generally came out of the blue from nowhere. He was the mayor of Moscow under Gorbachev. And while that's a somewhat important position, it's not an all-powerful one. And so he pretty much rose out of nowhere as well, because there's a million mayors out there in the Soviet Union, so it could have been any one of them. And then Putin came out of nowhere, generally during the time of Yeltsin, to end up replacing Yeltsin and then pretty much becoming the dictator of Russia from then on. So I would have to say that generally is the reason why I'm saying we just probably don't even know the guy. Like, we could go through the thousands of Russian officials out there, but out of all of those, then we're shooting impossible odds to predict which one would become the leader of Russia. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So also, by the way, I'm seeing people answer the question about the trucks. It looks like most people are saying Toyota Tacoma. That's what most people are saying about that. Honestly, I like those little trucks. They're pretty nice. They're not massive, but at the same time, though, it seems like the new American way is to go find the biggest truck you can get and buy that one, which usually is expensive as hell. But I just don't get it. Like, I don't really like the huge, massive trucks. They're too large. But Enforcer, a truck that is something. Do you know? Like, I'll see if you know first. Do you know what the most extreme truck is? I'm not talking about like a Raptor, like a Ram TRX or something like that. There's a even more extreme truck out there, and do you know what it is?
I actually wouldn't know.
So pull this up real quick. Show the people. It's the Arctic trucks. They had this on Top Gear like almost a decade ago, and they went to the Arctic with it. They actually drove the thing all the way to the Arctic. Yeah, not that one. It's like the Hilux, basically. It's like the Arctic truck Hilux modification. Let's see if they have it. They should have it here. Yeah, this is it right here. One of these. These things are like indestructible. First of all, the Hilux is a fantastic chassis. That thing's indestructible on its own. Go click on the red one down there at the bottom right corner. That's like the one right there that they took on the Top Gear expedition right there. That thing made it all the way to the Arctic. I think it was one of the first vehicles to actually make it to the top like that. I think it was the first one, and it was actually, believe it or not, the record holders for it is actually the Top Gear 2. It was James May and also Jeremy Clarkson, actually. That's the two that went. And also Hammond, I think, took a sled or something like that to the thing. But that is a very indestructible truck right there. If it can withstand the Arctic, it tells you how tough it is. And that thing can get over anything.
There was a really cool vehicle that they made to move around Antarctica in the 1930s, and I'm trying to see U.S. Snowcrawler. Let's see, Snowcrawler 1930s. Let me see if I can find it. The Arctic Snow Cruiser. This crazy looking thing.
Oh, damn.
And it was nuts. I mean, look at that.
That is crazy, honestly. That's not something you could buy as a consumer.
Oh
I
no.
don't think.
And you know what's crazy, man, is that it didn't work at all when they actually brought it to Antarctica. Like the tires were so smooth they couldn't get any traction. So anytime there was an incline, it would just slide right back down it. So they abandoned it 6 months. I think they abandoned it literally like 2 months in, but they kind of used it as like a storage site, and then they completely abandoned it 6 months later. I think it's still down there somewhere, like just sitting there. But I think it might have been buried in snow or something like that at this point. But it was a really crazy vehicle, like absolutely insane in the concept. But it did teach them that perfectly smooth tires was a really stupid idea. So the next time they ever tried anything like this, they had either tracked vehicles like these, like kind of like the Snowcat sorts of deals, or they had very traction tires. So pretty interesting with that. But anyways,
It is fascinating. You know, if I could pick any vehicle, if you said pick a vehicle that you're going to take, like for example, through the desert out in the middle of nowhere or through the Arctic or something like that, I would pick the Arctic trucks like we just looked at. Toyota Land Cruiser 250. That's probably the one I would pick. The Land Cruiser is just a beast. Like the older Land Cruiser that Toyota made. Not the new one is durable, obviously. I just don't think it looks as tough as the old one. That's the new one right there. That new sort of look. It's kind of a little bit of a strange design, if you ask me. But the older model, like the one the previous generation, let's see if you can pull that one up real quick and get a look on that. That one's too old of a generation. That's one of the original Land Cruisers, actually.
this one?
Yeah, that's like one of the originals right there. I'm talking about the last generation, this more modern one.
This one?
Oh no! It pull up like a 2018 Toyota Land Cruiser, and that'll be the ones I'm talking about.
This one?
Yeah, like that one. That's a beast right there. That thing's a beast. That thing can take a beating, and also that's an extremely heavy SUV right there. I think it was also a V8. I think it was a gas guzzler too. That was the only downside to it. But I would pick that right there, modified by Arctic trucks, and that thing could literally get through any environment, like desert, Arctic, whatever you're talking about. It would get there. I see a BC guy said Unimog. Unimog is cool, but Unimog is like. I'm not sure if it's really made to go fast. I'm not really sure how fast those things really go. But the Land Cruiser, you can get some good speed up in that.
I'll be honest with you, man. I love the original Unimogs, like this one. These were cool.
Those are cool. They were more like farm implements to begin with, and then they turned into like something more than that.
Man, you know the German army actually used these as troop transports, like the original Unimogs, like back in the day.
Yeah, I did know that actually.
Man, honestly, man, it was. Let's see, Unimog West German Army. Let me see if I can find that. I want to find the old ones that they were using in like the 60s, but 1960s. Let's see if we can find it. Oh yeah. These
Oh
things
wow.
look pretty cool, honestly, man. It's like a dune
You know
buggy.
the crazy part is it didn't look that great to be honest, but it was still like as capable as it is today. It's always been like super capable. It's just like the Mercedes was brilliant with that design. Like the center of gravity is perfect on it. Literally everything's perfect, and this thing can literally get over stuff that some like American military vehicles can't even get over. This thing can crawl anything.
But you know what, man? Germany was the land of crazy stuff at the end of well, after the Second World War, because they at the same time they had this thing, they had the Raketen Jagdpanzer. Let's see, Jagdpanzer. Let me see if this will pull it up. Yeah, this little crazy thing, which was an anti-tank missile carrier, and the anti-tank missiles would pop out of a hole in the roof and set up above the vehicle, and the gunner would use his periscopes and a little control system to guide the thing into its target by a wire. This thing was around the same time they adopted the Unimog.
Yeah, that's pretty. Well, it's cool from an equipment standpoint. What it did wasn't cool though.
And then they had the Kanonen Jagdpanzer, which was the same thing, but with a 105 millimeter gun. So basically the Cold War version of a Hetzer.
Yes, that is pretty neat.
Man, honestly, pretty neat. Like honestly, man, Germany is an interesting country because they also had this really crazy thing, the VT-1-2. Uh, and this was actually what was going to replace the Leopard 1 for a minute, or at least one of the bids to replace the Leopard 1, because they're like, man, we need a new main battle tank. So some crazy company, I forgot who it was, they were like, what if we just took pretty much the Leopard 1 hull or kind of improve it a little bit, and we put 2 120mm guns on it instead of one, and no turret. It was like an STRV 103. It obviously lost the bid, but the fact that that thing even was competing in the bid to the point that they made prototypes to demonstrate it is insane that it made it that far. Germany always is coming up with crazy stuff. Half of it doesn't work, but it's always really cool to look at because the Germans always make the failed prototypes cool enough that they're worth looking at and paying attention to a little bit. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to GR Mime, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, GR Mime, for that support. They said, howdy, y'all. And random question. Enforcer once upon a time said y'all may make how the U.S. works in the future. And now with the state of the world as it is that even still in the cards? And also, Slava Ukraine.
Probably not, unfortunately. I would love to do that, though. And I would love to talk about all the different government bureaus and agencies that do different stuff and obscure things that no one's ever heard about. But unfortunately, I just don't know if we'll ever have the time to be able to work on a series like that. And it also would have to be on a second channel, probably my own personal side channel, if we ever get to making those. And I don't know if we'll ever get to making those either. But it hopefully will be on the cards at some point in the future. Honestly, I'd like to do a side channel where I can do all kinds of stuff, like videos like that, explaining different little parts of the government that people have never heard about, or showing how stuff is made or how stuff works in general. Because I always find that stuff really interesting, and I love talking about it because I find a lot of interest in it. So I hope that does address that well. Unfortunately, though, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon for now. But with that, a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Pliam, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Pliam, for that support as well. And I do not see a comment attached to it there. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we are still massively appreciative of your support because it's helping us to keep this show on air. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Nathan Ringerwall. And thank you very much, Nathan, as well, for that support. He said the most hospitable town is Powell, Texas.
Powell, Texas?
Powell.
Spelled like
Colin Powell.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was wondering. Let's see. Powell, Texas. Most hospitable town. Wow, that's a tiny town.
That's barely a town.
Yeah, that's like why in the world is the city limit like this? Like, what is up with the city limit, man? But let's drop down in there and take a little gander.
Well, I could have sworn I saw a Dugway for a second before you jumped down here.
Oh yeah, I think it's like an artifact. For some reason, Google does that these days. I don't know why. But the Green Tree Pecan Company, or as we call them in the South, pecans. I've heard of people call it pecans, but it's pecans to us. But Powell State Bank. This is quite a small town. It looks like we've made it all the way through already. Interesting though.
That's some wet water or wet roadways back there on the road.
Man, Blood said wet water. Like, man.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. Also, it looks like they've been putting some tracks in their streets too. They've really worn this pavement down.
Yeah, I mean they are absolutely pounding pavement through this place right here.
Pounding it, wow.
Huh?
Pounding it, wow.
So-and-so was up in Bubba's office, and he was getting pounded.
Lock in.
Man, lock in. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Very interesting town, by the way. Powell Gin. Is this like gin? Oh, this is a cotton gin. I thought this meant like gin is in the drink. But this is just literal cotton bales and mounds of cotton. That looks like the cotton that didn't make it. But that looks like the cotton that was processed out in the processing. But that's crazy. They have a cotton gin in this town. But anyways, with that, a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support. Oh my God, Indeed. Man, there had been a derailment down here right outside of this town. You can literally see it right here.
That is crazy.
Look at that, dude. There's loads of Amazon Prime shipping containers sitting out here in the middle of nowhere, and the cars are still flipped over around here in some places. That's crazy. That happened right outside of this town, apparently. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Truckin' Chef, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, as well. He said, look up Area 52. It's toward your west. And we did. We did. We took a look at it right there. Honestly, cool fact about Dugway, one of the coolest facts, is they do have, there's the alien drawing again right there. But the coolest thing about Dugway, the proving grounds, that is they do have, or at least they did have, a mock German village that they would practice what's known as firebombing with it. So they would test it there. They'd also test chemical releases in the little fake German town too, and they do all that stuff out there. So it was pretty cool, pretty neat little village there. It looked like Dresden, I think, I believe. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it's a very interesting thing. And one day I'll have to come out here to see this mural of this absolutely geeked out alien on the side of this wall. Like this alien looks like it's hit the blunt one too many times. Like honestly, like it looks like Hot Dog Man on a bad day. Or really a good day, honestly, because Hot Dog Man on a bad day, he'll turn you to stone. But beyond that, huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to We Buffett, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, We Buffett, for that support. They said, I really enjoy how you guys incorporate comedy into your live streams. It really lightens the mood. And y'all are funny. And I appreciate you guys giving us the real accurate news. And keep it up.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words. And we love to know that we are able to make the news a little bit more entertaining so that way people can get through it every day. Some people come in here every single night and they complain that we joke around, and to those people, they'll never find joy in life, and that's not our problem.
Damn. Putting them down.
Man, I'm just being honest, man. Like the people who come in here complaining about that, they gotta go like fly a kite or get a life or something, because we've been doing this for years. And if we acted every single day like it was a funeral, we wouldn't have been able to stay in this business for long. And look at all the people who did do that. They didn't stay in the business for long, or they're hardly hanging on, because that whole doom and gloom thing every day of acting like the world's ending or every day is a funeral, that gets tiring to people pretty quickly, including the people who are doing that. And I got to thank you so much for the support and appreciating our comedy, and that we try and keep things light here, although the news is incredibly serious, because we want to make sure that we are getting people through the news every day, and a good way to do that is making it light enough that it's digestible. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Philip Harrison, who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Philip, for that support. He said the Croque Monsieur and Swig Fund and LOT LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the Croque Monsieur Fund and the Swig Fund. We will be enjoying lots of swig, but we can't because we'll get diabetes, but we still will have swigs. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Robert, as well, for that support. He said, good evening, LSA, and chicken on me.
Hey! We love $5 Costco chickens, and we thank you greatly for helping us to continue to eat $5 Costco chickens. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Thomas D'Orazio, who puts in a 10. And Thomas said, always look forward to some of the best coverage in the world of the global hotspots, and keep up the great work.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support. And thanks to your support and kind words, not only will we be able to make that financially possible to keep up the good work, but we'll be able to have the encouragement to keep up the good work too. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Financially recover from it. When you said that, it made me like think in my head. I was like, of that guy who said, I'm never going to financially recover from this. And I just imagine like a person, the average American, going to the grocery store these days and basically saying that line at this point because how expensive the groceries are. I'm telling you, it's absurd. It's gross how expensive those groceries are. It's just gross. I guess what they didn't call it the grocer for real now, I guess. But jumping into our next one, this one goes to Space Fraggle, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Space Fraggle, for the support. But Space Fraggle said, I enjoy this channel so much, and long live the LSA.
And thank you so much, Space Fraggle, for enjoying the channel. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And Matthew, you know, I got to tell you, Folks, I've never done this before in my life, but I'm going to have to dress Matthew down. Matthew, you are a flat-out liar. The economy has never been better. As a matter of fact, people are buying yachts these days. The economy is so good. How dare you desecrate this country this way? You ought to know better than lying to all of the people, all of the good Americans in this chat, that you cannot afford groceries. I mean, sure, I had to take out a second mortgage to be able to go to Costco the other day, but you ought to not be lying to the people like that. They deserve to know better. Can you
I
believe
tell you what, if someone said that, I would. If someone really said that for real in real life, I would call them an idiot. But it turns out they were a politician.
I think I went. If you call them an idiot, though, that's not like different than them being a politician. That's like one and the same these days. An idiot is a politician.
That's worse. It's worse, actually. If you call somebody an idiot, that's light work. If you call them a politician, you've gone hard on them.
Man,
no, did he?
Honestly. Also, by the way, folks, I'm just being sarcastic about the dressing down. The economy is not doing well. We all know that. And things are quite expensive these days. But if you say that around certain people, they'll call you a liar, although they're also paying the increased prices as well, like they're blind or something, which is insane. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here. Also, by the way, he might get picked up by the current leadership. By the way, Enforcer might get a cabinet position for long after he said that little line back there. Honestly, that was some top tier glazing work right there. You might be in for a very nice position with that. Keep that up. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to JB Jake, who put in 10. And JB said, "I wish I could help more, but thank you for all you do to bring us the news around the world, and congratulations on the channel's success and the fundraising efforts, and much respect from Australia."
Hey, and a huge respect to Australia as well. And I got to say a big thanks to you for the kind words. And I got to say that credit is due not really to us as the enforcers for the fundraisers, but always to the folks who are supporting the fundraisers, because they do incredible work. We just happen to be the people who run the fundraisers, but the folks who support them, they're deserving of all the praise, really, because they're the ones putting their hard-earned dollars in supporting American and Western interests around the globe. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the support and the kind words. And before we move on to the next one, I do have to make sure, folks, to try and set up myself career-wise to be career stable. So allow me for a second to make sure that I can get a job if YouTube fails. The President of the United States is the greatest person on the planet, best person alive, probably even better than Jesus and all the founding fathers. It's truly incredible what he's done. He's fixed the economy. There's peace around the world forevermore. Don't just ignore the gunfire outside. That's nothing. The economy's never been doing better. I know you're broke, but, just go get a job and work a little harder. And, also on top of that, folks, I mean, have you looked at the state of the country this day? We have never been more united than ever. I mean, I've heard at least 20 people today talk about civil war, but completely ignore that. Things are going fine. Like, things are going great. So, nothing could ever be better. And if anyone would like to give me a cabinet position, I'll make sure to say whatever the hell you want, even if it doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, I'll also say things like the list isn't real, which ought to get me a great position these days. So with that, we are on to the next one.
There's just one more step that you forgot about. Just one more step. The glazing is one thing, but you got to go a little bit further than that. It takes a little bit more. It takes a little bit more. They say, sir. They said he came in on his knees, sir. They said he came in on his knees. Oh, man. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Chef Danny B once again, who puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Chef, for that second support of the night right there. And we do appreciate that. Hey. And he said, Chef Danny again. And in our mountains here, we have a casino town called Black Hawk, Colorado, that is. And there is an old locomotive up there. And could you tell us what kind it is?
That is a great question. This actually used to be a part of I believe it was the Denver and Rio Grande's narrow gauge railway empire that they had in Utah and Colorado. And up here, there is an engine. And let me see. I wouldn't be able to give you the exact name of the thing because it's a narrow gauge engine and I'm not really a big expert on those. It's around here somewhere. Let's see. Let me just type it in. Train at, let's see. It's Black Hawk, yeah, so train near Black Hawk, Colorado. This...
I just realized something. If the internet ever goes down in that city right there of Colorado, you could literally say Black Hawk down.
man, you could. Man, that was actually pretty smart right there. Let's see. The Black Hawk train. So that is a narrow gauge. Dang, they don't have any good pictures of this thing. So it's actually a Colorado Central 280 consolidation. these ran all through these valleys here around Black Hawk. Black Hawk was kind of their epicenter, but they would run all the way up to places in the mountains like Central City, Rawlinsville, and all the way down to Idaho Springs and everywhere in between through the valleys. So that is one of the trains that was a part of this railroad. I think later on, this became part of the Denver and Rio Grande, or it was kind of operated by the Denver and Rio Grande, I believe. But I might be mistaken on that. But I do know that the Denver and Rio Grande was like the narrow gauge empire of Colorado, so they probably were affiliated with the Rio Grande at some point. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, Danny B. And it's also crazy to think that this hub of the railroads here in the mountains just turned into like basically like y'all's version of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee out here. That's really interesting, honestly. But with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that quite well indeed. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one. But before we move on to the next one, Matthew, how many questions do we have left?
We have about 10 left.
Oh, that's not too bad. We're actually doing pretty good. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Suezo, who puts in a 10. And Suezo said, driving with stuff in the back, the enforcer made that drive with Matt. A few horses and wagon out west. It sounded like a journey. And glad no one got an unfortunate disease or snake bitten in Slav Ukraine.
Oh, he's talking about the Oregon Trail game. Like he's talking about the Oregon Trail. Man, honestly.
They got syphilis on that?
Yeah, like you could get dysentery in that game and die, or like syphilis and stuff. But
I thought syphilis was an STD.
Yeah, I mean, what, dude? You thought there weren't working women out there on the trail? Every once in a while, there were some. You could get it, like you could get it still and drop dead from it, or you could get dysentery and syphilis and die. You know, you could get a double whammy or a combo.
That sounds like a bad deal.
Yeah, it was kind of a raw deal, figuratively and literally, and so it wasn't really the greatest thing for a lot of people. But beyond that, I would have to say a big thanks to you for the support, and I like the Oregon Trail reference. That was a pretty good one, and so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who put in a 5. And Sarge said, I'm back. And LSA hit that like button. That's an order.
Welcome back, LSA Sergeant Figment. It's good to have you here. And we always love to know that our favorite NCO of the Lee Spring Army is here with us again tonight. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And another one here. A big shout out to David Robinson for putting in a $5 support, and also a big shout out to Born in Ukraine for a $3 support, and also Plazad for a $3, and also a $2 support from Led by Holy Spirit. And thank you to all 4 of you very much for that support, and also helping to keep the channel running. And we do appreciate all 4 of you for helping to pitch in and keep the lights on at Enforcer HQ. Which number are we, by the way? I keep saying this wrong.
3.0.
3.0. It's 3.0. It's Enforcer 3.0. But thank you very much to all 4 of you. And our next one here goes to Dario, who puts in a 5 and said, how much would it take to the U.S. to remove Maduro's regime from the first land-air operation? And by the way, today's demonstration in Mexico City was wild, and thank you very much.
I thank you for the support. Also, by the way, just to cover this for folks, we're not covering the Mexican situation because for now it looks like it may be an internal domestic political situation. So that's why we're not giving that any coverage, in case of y'all were wondering. But beyond that, the Venezuela situation, it wouldn't take a lot for us to remove Maduro from power, in my honest opinion. The military looks incredibly weak, and if they don't have a military, the government will erode really quickly, because you're not going to see Maduro whip out 2 Uzis and fight the Marine Corps single-handedly. That's not happening. So, generally, I think it's going to be fairly easy to take out Maduro, in my honest opinion. So, a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, I see some people talking about the whole syphilis deal in the Wild West, and someone said it was a big deal. It was a big deal, and they would treat it with mercury. They would treat it with pills of white mercury, which sounds wildly unsafe because mercury is toxic to consume. But they would give it to people back then as treatments, and either the mercury would kill them or the syphilis would kill them, one way or the other. There's actually a really famous song from the Wild West called "The Streets of Laredo," which is a story, or kind of like a story put to song, about a cowboy that was walking through the streets of Laredo, Texas, and he saw a fellow cowboy that had actually gotten with a working woman who had syphilis, and he got it, and he was pretty much sitting outside of like a It's like a hostel or something like that, and he was dying of cholera, well, syphilis, I mean. And the song goes, it was hot as the day, but he was wrapped up in flannel, all that sort of stuff, like clear signs that he's on the verge of dying from syphilis. But that's how big it was, is that there were actually songs, like tragic songs and stuff from the Wild West about those sorts of things happening. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to the Wisdom to Know, who puts in a 5. He said, our universe is much better off with LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for supporting. I would certainly agree. There ain't no place like the LSA. LSA all the way. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nate, and Nate puts in a 5 and said, greetings from the Fort Bragg area, and keep up the great work, and Low Country, boil or bust.
Hey, and a huge shout out to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And a big, massive thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you make this thing possible for us to be able to continue to give shout outs to the folks in the Low Country. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to 90% Junk Silver, who puts in a 2 and said, the time is near, water and food.
The time is near, water and food. But beyond that, a big thanks to you for the support. And possibly water and food would be nice. But I honestly would not partake in the water and food. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I don't know why, but it made me think of that song, that one that goes, the 3 blind mice.
Yeah, this made me think of that too. Like, I was trying to imitate
know why.
that.
Yeah, I don't even know why, but it jumped in my head for some reason. I had to say it, of course. But our next one here goes to Z1, who puts in a 2 and said, how much horsepower does LSA have? Slavia, Ukraine. Oh, we have as much horsepower here as a clapped out boosted Civic. We have as much horsepower as a dragster Toyota Supra with dual turbos. We're talking about twin turbo. I'm talking about big horsepower, over 1,000. But Enforcer, tell us more.
The Lee Spring Army has about 540,000 horsepower, because a human person can briefly produce about 1.2 horsepower and sustain about 0.1 horsepower indefinitely. So at our max output for a brief period of time, the Lee Spring Army could have 540,000 horsepower. So, not that bad, really. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we possibly can. A big thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bennett Martinez, who puts in it 2. He said, any chance we can hear about the Mexico situation?
Generally not, because it appears to be an internal domestic political situation, which we usually don't get involved in cover. Well, we actually never get involved in covering those at all, unless if it's something in Serbia, like, for example, anything that has to do with possible Russian influence, like the protests in Georgia and Serbia. Those were covered just because they had something to do with the Russians, but anything like with what's going on in Mexico, generally we don't cover those because they look like they may be domestically political. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Marc-Andre Brunette for also putting in a $1 support. And thank you very much, good sir, Marc-Andre Brunette, for that support and being a longtime channel legend as well. And with that, it is now time to jump into our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders. We had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush Kobe, Terry Siren, Brian Blairstown. And they said any hour now, Venezuela is going to get hit by U.S. forces, so we are on standby in LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail, and I gotta congratulate y'all greatly. The Lee Spring Army Signal Corps is getting that correct time and time again. Truly amazing and incredible stuff. And I've got to say that it is a wonderful and incredible thing to know that people are continuing to get that correct. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I also have a little bit of breaking news for y'all folks. The Israelis have actually weighed in now a second time on the F-35 deal. And this is now what we're hearing. According to defense officials, Israel must strongly object to the sale of F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. Netanyahu may lift Israeli objections if Saudi Arabia agrees to advance peace without insisting on a Palestinian state. like the Israelis get to lay terms to us on who we sell weapons to. Honestly, at this point, I'm going to be straight up with y'all. Considering that this is now becoming a big thing for the Israelis with the United States, I would just sell the F-35s to Saudi Arabia on the principle of the Israelis aren't going to tell us a damn thing to do with our weapons. We'll sell them to who we want, and they ought to learn that. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I've never seen a country act like they have a right to tell people who they sell their guns to, but I think that there needs to be a lesson taught on that one. But anyways, with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the live chats. We're going to be getting, due to time constraints, 3 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out this stream for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Active Vista, who said, what does one suppose the exit strategy for Venezuela might be?
I don't really know if the current administration has an exit strategy, to be entirely honest with you. That sort of intricate planning would generally be beyond the means of the current administration and the prior administration. I would say that the best sort of exit plan that we could have, though, if they really did think it through like that, would be that the U.S. will go in, overthrow Maduro, will set up an interim government, keep a minimal security force of several brigades within the country. After about 2 years' time, there will be a large occupation for about a year or two. Then we cut it down to a couple of brigades, and then we sit there, let the interim government become strengthened, and then we leave. So generally, the plan should be overthrow Maduro, install a new government that's pro-American. It does not matter what type it turns into, whether it's a dictatorship or democracy, it just has to be stable. We make sure that it's planted in place and has strong relations with the United States, and then we leave. That should generally be the exit strategy, but I don't know if we're going to end up executing an exit strategy like that or even have one at all. We might go in and then try and figure that out later, which is generally not a good idea. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to none other than Vollinger, who said, have you seen the fighting going on in Sawaida inside of Syria in that province in the last couple of days? And what do you think about that?
I haven't seen it, at least recently, but it's an unfortunate thing going on in Sawaida, the actions against the Druze people, and it's something that I think that the United States should condemn, because it is not within the United States moralistic grounds to see that the Druze, which have been an ally of the United States and generally Israel within the area, continue to be walloped by the interim government in Syria. So I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Bryce. And Bryce said, what are the odds that with Russian industry and the economy about to collapse, that Putin throws a fit and lobs a nuke at Ukraine?
The chances are low, because unless if they can justify some sort of an existential threat to the Russians, well, actually they could. I just thought about that. With the Ukrainians attacking Russia's oil industries and economy to the point that it's about to collapse, they actually could state that the Ukrainians are an existential threat to the Russians, and so they could justify a nuke on Ukraine. They could actually justify several of them on Ukraine at that point, but I have a feeling that the chances of that are low, because if they conducted an action like that, it's highly likely that that's going to start destabilizing the world heavily on the foreign policy side of things, and a larger war with Russia, with NATO, could start to break out at that point, because then Russia would be pretty much laying out the precedent. If they ever look like they're losing, they could just nuke anyone, including NATO at that point, and we're just letting that slide if we don't do anything about what happened to Ukraine. So, I have a feeling that the chances would still be somewhat low that that would just happen out of the blue. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say that it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all once again, on both of the behalf of me, the Enforcer, and Enforcer Matt. We had a peak viewership tonight of 13.9 thousand people. Nearly 14,000 people were here tonight, and 102,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We thank you all so much once again for your time and dedication to the Enforcer channel and the Lee Spring Army. We will see you all tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and if there is a short war video to be made tomorrow, I, the Enforcer, will be the one to make the short war video. And so with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow night for the Sunday Night Fundraiser stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also midday for that short war video as well if there is enough news to cover. And right now, in Venezuela time, it is 12:40 a.m. in the morning. So they are about halfway through their night, or getting into the morning hours now. So if the U.S. is going to strike, we will hear about it tomorrow morning, and we will cover that in the short war video. But in the meantime, though, thank you to all 100,000 people that were here tonight. Actually, 100,000 plus people that were here tonight. And we will see you all tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, get some rest, and good night.